LoveLore Library. Chapter 97. Qin Huayuan said slowly and patiently, "You are my daughter. I naturally understand what you are thinking and feeling indignant right now. You are intelligent and keen, and you can see through many things at a glance. However, you are too impetuous. Once you see through things, you won't forgive them. Everything needs to be separated into right and wrong. I know that when you argue or fight with someone at home, there is basically no one who can stop you. However, what about outside? If you really encounter a martial artist, you only have a little more strength. What can you do to him? Moreover, you are relying on your status as the legitimate daughter. In this family, no one will harm my daughter. However, outside, even if you don't take the initiative to provoke someone, there will be people who will harm you. Sister E, don't you think that what I said is reasonable?" "Father, you are absolutely right. Daughter knows her mistake." Qin Yining lowered her head in shame. Daughter is indeed too serious. Sometimes, when I see some injustice, I can't help but be impulsive. Qin Huayuan smiled. "I understand your feelings, but you have to remember that filial piety is the most important virtue. Even if the old madam is wrong in doing things, she is still my mother. If you want to change your mother's situation, I believe that you have more than one way to directly confront her. You can use your powerful methods on Qin Huayuan, but using them on the old madam is disrespectful to your elders. Moreover, what can you do even if you win an argument with your elders? In the future, it will be you and your mother who will suffer. Don't you think so?" Qin Huayuan spent most of his time in the outer residence. Other than paying respects to the old madam, he rarely stepped into the inner residence. Qin Yining admired him for being able to analyze the people in the inner residence so thoroughly. "Father, you are right. Actually, daughter also regrets it. At that time, daughter only thought that since the old madam didn't love me, she would still not love me no matter what I said or did. She would still be cold to my mother and me. Therefore, daughter threw caution to the wind. But in fact, you also have a tactful way. You just couldn't hold back because you were hot-headed." Qin Yining nodded with a red face. She looked like a well-behaved little kitten who knew she had made a mistake and was begging for her master's forgiveness. Qin Huayuan laughed. "You're still a child. Being reckless and impulsive isn't a big mistake. As your father, I also feel that as a person, we cannot blindly endure. We must use both strength and gentleness. I'm not saying that you can't use both hard and soft methods, but you have to be clear about who you're dealing with. For people you can't offend, it might be more appropriate to use both hard and soft methods." "Yes." Qin Yining looked at Qin Huayuan with admiration, his eyes sparkling. "Father, you were like this just now. When you said that there was a knife hidden in a smile, many people felt guilty and blushed. Father, when can your daughter be like you? I think you're amazing." He didn't make a fuss, he didn't even need to raise his voice. With just a few words, he was able to suppress him. Qin Huayuan was very satisfied when his daughter looked at him with such an admiring gaze. Big Hand couldn't help but pat Qin Yining's head. "That's one thing, but more importantly, it's because of my identity." Qin Yining blinked. Her eyelashes suddenly flickered. She understood Qin Huayuan's meaning. Father was telling her that only by standing in a higher position and being relied on by others could one be respected. Moreover, only by standing in a higher position and planning a higher position could one be trusted. Otherwise, one would be considered a rebel and would be criticized. Qin Yining nodded heavily. "Your daughter understands. In the future, I'll definitely be filial to old madam. These aren't big matters. I believe you can handle them well. However, there are still many suspicious points about what happened at the Lady Immortal Temple today. Come and tell your father about it." Qin Yining knew that Qin Huayuan would definitely ask, so she didn't hesitate to tell him what had happened. When she talked about Yao Zhishi, Qin Yining didn't tell him the truth. Instead, she used the words she used to deal with Su Mao. Qin Huayuan didn't doubt such a half-truth. He only said, although young Master Yao is acquainted with shopkeeper Zhong, I can tell from his eyes and aura that he isn't an ordinary person. It's only right for you to order someone to treat his injuries, but it's also a good idea to keep a respectful distance from him. Qin Yining thought back to everything that had happened since she met Yao Zhishi. She also felt that this person was unfathomable. She obediently said, "Father, don't worry." Seeing that his daughter didn't hide anything from him, Qin Huayuan was very satisfied. He nodded and said, "Do as you see fit. I believe you have your own principles. There's one more thing you have to pay attention to. Father, please instruct me." Right now, Dezhou's documents have been widely distributed in the city twice. The emperor has concluded that Dezhou's spies have already entered the capital. In addition to what happened at the Lady Immortal Temple today, official Su believes that Dezhou's people are deliberately creating misunderstandings. If the emperor finds out, he will be alarmed and uneasy. If the emperor is uneasy, what do you think he will do? Qin Yining thought for a moment and then said bluntly, the emperor will definitely think of a way to make peace. He will be even softer towards Dezhou. He will cut down those officials who are loyal to him to appease Dezhou's anger. Qin Huayuan was choked by Qin Yining's straightforward words. Seeing Qin Huayuan's silence, Qin Yining asked with a smile, "Father, is what daughter said wrong? Your analysis is very insightful." Qin Huayuan coughed and said, "Right now, because our family has become in-laws with the Chao family, I have become brother-in-laws with the emperor. For the time being, we have no worries. It's hard to say about other families. Therefore, if there are any flower appreciation parties held recently, don't go. I will explain this matter to your grandmother later." "Yes. Daughter will remember. Also, about your mother." Speaking of the Sun clan, Qin Huayuan frowned and sighed, "This time, no matter what the reason is, I am sorry for your mother. You have to take care of her." Qin Yining nodded obediently. Seeing that Qin Huayuan felt guilty towards the Sun clan because of taking a concubine by imperial decree, her heart was filled with mixed feelings. Her father had no choice, and her mother's resentment was actually not wrong. In the end, all of this was because of the emperor's various actions that their peaceful lives were disrupted. The study was silent. After a long time, Qin Huayuan said, "Right now, Xihua City and Dezhou City have changed their commander-in-chief. I don't know if the war will be eased." "Changed their commander-in-chief?" Qin Yining said in surprise, "Isn't that little Wang Yi the commander-in-chief? Peng Zhishi is arrogant and unruly. Before the war, he refused to listen to Emperor Zhou's command. In a fit of anger, Emperor Zhou stripped him of his position as commander-in-chief. Right now, Dezhou's new commander-in-chief is the Minister of War, Lian Xingjie." Qin Huayuan's face revealed a mocking smile. This Lian Xingjie's ability to lead troops is average. He's also lecherous and greedy. He's a person who is used to currying favor. Our spies reported that Peng Zhishi was dissatisfied with being stripped of his position as commander-in-chief. In just 2 days, he had a falling out with Lian Xingjie. In a fit of anger, he rode his horse and left the military camp. Right now, no one knows where he went. Peng Zhishi's tiger army refused to listen to Lian Xingjie's commands. If Dezhou continues to cause trouble like this, perhaps our crisis will be resolved. Peng Zhishi. When Qin Yining heard this name, he immediately thought of Yao Zhishi. However, the two of them happened to have the same surname, so it wasn't strange. Qin Yining didn't think too much about it and only said, "It's naturally good if they have internal strife." Qin Huayuan also said, right now, it's up to them to make arrangements. We can also take advantage of this opportunity to take a breather. When Qin Yining heard Qin Huayuan's tone, he knew that on Dezhou's side, even if Pang Zhishi wasn't leading the troops, their chances of victory in Dian weren't high. Even if their chances weren't high, Qin Yining still hoped that they would be able to peacefully celebrate the new year. Dian's 35th year of Qinglong, Dezhou's 3rd year of Xingqiang, arrived in the bland atmosphere of the new year. Qin Yining and the Sun clan had to observe mourning for the male heir of the Sun clan. Not only did they dress plainly, but they also didn't participate in any of the family's banquets or performances. Last time, 6th young mistress had been grounded by 2nd madam because she helped Qin Huaining. Because of the new year, her confinement was lifted. However, Qin Huaining was ordered by Qin Huayuan to stay in the Snow Pear courtyard to reflect on her mistakes and copy the classic of filial piety 100 times. For some reason, she didn't immediately finish copying. During the new year, she was exceptionally quiet. The most surprising thing was Qin Huayuan's attitude towards Chao Yuqing. Qin Huayuan had always acted as if he didn't see such a gentle and beautiful woman. He only provided for her with good food and drink and had never visited her courtyard. Qin Huayuan's attitude made the people in the residence treat the Sun clan with a lot more respect. Except for old madam. Aren't the Sun clan and Sister Yi observing mourning? Naturally, they can't eat big fish and big meat. The kitchen will just make some vegetarian dishes and send them over. Just do it in the simplest way possible. If it's too delicate, how can it show the filial piety of the Sun clan? Also, Sister Yi's bird's nest porridge was waived. Don't birds' nests need money? Who gave her the face to observe mourning in such an extravagant manner? Old madam held the brand new brass tobacco pipe and took 2 puffs. She felt that the new tobacco holder wasn't as good as the original one, so she couldn't help but feel angry. Mammy Qin tried to persuade her several times, but she didn't dare to say it too straightforwardly and make old madam suspicious. In the end, she could only have people send dishes like boiled vegetables to Xingning Garden. In Xingning Garden, the Sun clan held a bowl and looked at the brown rice in the bowl. Then, she looked at the pot of vegetable soup that had turned yellow from being boiled with vegetable leaves. She was so angry that her whole body was trembling. What is this? They're bullying me because I don't have parents. No matter how bad I am, I'm still Qin Meng's legitimate wife. Is this how their residence treats Qin Meng's family? The Sun clan was so angry that they wanted to smash the bowl. Qin Yining's eyes were sharp and his hands were quick. He saved the pitiful white porcelain bowl. It was unknown how many bowls had been broken in the past few days. Just the broken bowls and plates were worth more than the vegetable soup they ate. Mother, calm down. Do you remember what I said to you a few days ago? Only by suffering the hardest of hardships can one rise above others. Moreover, although they didn't put much effort into the food they sent, the food we ate wasn't bad. Qin Yining smiled and said, do you think the vegetarian dishes in Guangyuan building are good? Daughter, should I ask someone to buy more? The Sun clan's eyes were full of tears. We're the eldest branch. Every month, there's a fixed amount of allowance. When the head kitchen sent this kind of food box, we ate even worse than the servants. Where did the money go? I sent someone to ask. They said that we have to observe mourning, so we should eat more vegetarian food. They didn't forget to eat and drink well. The eldest branch, concubine Chao, and your father's original for concubines also divided our share of the money. Old madam, this is slapping my face. She couldn't hold back her tears and finally fell. Upon seeing this, Qin Yining was helpless. He tried to coax and persuade her. After saying all the persuasive words, the Sun clan finally stopped crying. Right at this moment, a delicate voice came from the courtyard. Mother Jin's expression was very ugly as she replied, "Eldest Madam, Concubine Chow, Concubine Hua, Concubine Li, Concubine Qian, Concubine Chen, and Miss Huining have come to pay their respects to you." Chapter 98. Chapter 98. The milk is the mother. We pay our respects to Madam and 4th Mississippi, daughter greets mother. The ladies' sweet voices were pleasing to the ear, and the scene of them saluting in an orderly manner was very pleasing to the eye. The premise was that he did not look at the smug looks on their faces. Qin Yining smiled and returned the greeting. Then, he sat down in the seat below the Sun clan. On the other hand, the Sun clan's face was flushed red. In her heart, she was thinking that she shouldn't care about the plain tea and food on the table, nor should she think about her red eyes from crying. She should only take out the imposing manner of the first wife to deal with these people. But her flushed face still betrayed the embarrassment and humiliation in her heart. Chao Yuqing leisurely sat on a round-backed chair, lazily propping up her body with her elbows. She looked at the crowd with a smile, as if she was waiting to watch a good show. Concubine Hua, Concubine Li, Concubine Qian, and Concubine Qin originally wanted to follow suit and sit down with Concubine Chao. However, when they raised their eyes and inadvertently met Qin Yining's faint smile, they paused. After all, they didn't have an outstanding family background like Chao Yuqing's, so they didn't dare to act recklessly. At this time, Qin Huining had already walked over to the Sun clan with a smile. She took the Sun clan's arm and sat beside her. She explained softly, "Mother, I was grounded by father these days and couldn't come to accompany you. You look a lot thinner." Yes. The members of the Sun clan were happy to see their daughter. However, when their eyes fell on her silver-red embroidered jacket, they couldn't help but frown. "What are you wearing? Your grandfather and uncle just passed away not long ago. Who are you trying to impress by dressing up like this?" Qin Huining sneered inwardly when he heard this, but his face was full of fear. He stood up and lowered his head. "Mother, it's the first month of the lunar month now. Daughter wants to walk around outside and is afraid that I will provoke old Madam's displeasure. Naturally, I can only dress up a little. What's more, adoptive mother has just married into the family. I also want to show my filial piety. Foster mother." The members of the Sun clan didn't understand what she meant. Qin Yining's gaze had already landed on Chao Yuqing, who was lazily eating candied dates. Chao Yuqing sensed Qin Yining's gaze and returned a polite smile, intending to get closer to him. Qin Yining raised his eyebrows slightly and retracted his gaze. It seemed that Qin Huining had already latched onto Chao Yuqing's thigh. Concubine Chen smiled and said, replying to First Madam, "Miss Huining and Chao Jijia are very fated. Now old Madam has made the decision to let Miss Huining recognize Chao Jijia as her adoptive mother. This servant just went to Ci Shao Garden to observe the ceremony." Concubine Chen was now 35 years old. She had served Qin Huayuan as a maidservant since she was a child. Later, she became a Tongfang maidservant. After the Sun clan married in, she became a concubine. Madame Chen felt that her relationship with Qin Huayuan was not normal. Even if she sold herself to the family Qin, her status was different, so she did not care about what she said. All these years, she had suspected that the Sun clan had used sterilization drugs on her. Otherwise, how could she not be pregnant? That's right. This servant saw that Miss Huining and Chao Jijia are indeed fated. Even their countenance is so similar. Seeing Concubine Chen like this, Concubine Qian also smiled cooperatively. Just now, there was a banquet in Ci Shao Garden. Everyone said that Miss Huining and Chao Jijia are somewhat similar. It's just that the sisters were all thinking of First Madam, so they only ate a few bites before specially coming to pay their respects to First Madam. Madame Qian was bought from outside by old Madame in order to carry on the family line for Qin Huayuan. She was 28 years old now, but looked like she was in her early 20s. She was very charming and very moving. With concubine Chen and concubine Qian taking the lead, concubine Hua and concubine Li also smiled. They did not care about the Sun clan's ashen complexion and began to congratulate her. Qin Huaining revealed a bashful expression. She pulled on the Sun clan's sleeve and shook it like a spoiled child, calling out, "Mother." The Sun clan's vision turned black, and her head buzzed. After a long while, she finally gasped for breath and pointed at Qin Huaining with a trembling finger. "Good, good. You ungrateful ingrate. I was blind to have raised you for so many years in vain." As soon as she finished speaking, she threw a slap over. How could Qin Huaining expect that the Sun clan would not care that Chao Yuqing was also present and actually raise her hand to slap her? She simply didn't have time to dodge and was slapped to the ground. She covered her face and blankly raised her head to look at the Sun clan. The Sun clan's tears of humiliation that she had been holding back fell again. She pointed at the people in the room and said, "I naturally know what you are planning. Don't forget, I'm still Qin Meng's legitimate wife." The four concubines admired the Sun clan's fierce appearance and laughed mockingly. They had been bullied by the Sun clan for long enough. Now, they could finally see what it meant by "a featherless phoenix is inferior to a chicken." It was truly delightful. Qin Huaining covered her face and sobbed, "Mother, please calm down. No matter who I take as my adoptive mother, mother is still my mother. Your daughter will never forget your kindness in raising me. Your daughter just hit it off with adoptive mother. You're acting like this, aren't you embarrassing adoptive mother?" Her words caused everyone to look at Chao Yuqing in unison. They saw Chao Yuqing sitting upright in her original position and eating a candied date from her small sunny pouch. Her red lips were slightly pouted, and she looked very beautiful. The concubines seemed to have found their backbone when they saw Chao Yuqing like this. They once again looked contemptuously at the Sun clan and all of them tried to persuade her, First Madam should also have some grace. That's right. Ding General Manor is gone, but First Madam is still here. Could it be that First Madam's upbringing is gone because Ding General Manor is gone? Now that Dowager Duchess is happy, who is First Madam targeting? Could it be that she's dissatisfied with Dowager Duchess? No, First Madam values filial piety the most. How could she be disrespectful to Dowager Duchess? Then she's targeting older sister Chao. The four concubines were all very eloquent. With just a few words, they pulled the two people who already had a blood feud to the top. The Sun clan's eyes were already red from anger. Chao Yuqing was still eating the snacks that she brought with her. In the past, Ding General Manor was powerful, and the Sun clan was domineering. Ordinary people didn't dare to offend the Sun clan. Even Dowager Duchess had to be courteous to her in front of the Sun clan. Qin Huayuan also wasn't enthusiastic about concubines, so these four concubines naturally didn't dare to act rashly. Now, it was different from the past. The Sun clan was now eating simple tea and eating plain food and receiving Dowager Duchess' supercilious looks. Without a backer, they also had to face the powerful Chao Yuqing. How could these concubines not take the opportunity to step on them? The Sun clan's brain buzzed again, and she was so angry that her whole body trembled. Just as she was about to flare up, Qin Yining spoke first. Her voice wasn't loud, and she said indifferently, "All of you, shut up." When the concubines heard Qin Yining's voice, they were all stunned. However, they didn't put the Sun clan in their eyes, and Qin Yining was even more insignificant now. They continued to persuade them as usual. Qin Yining sneered and raised her voice slightly, "Mother Jean, how should a concubine be punished for disrespecting the mistress? Replying to Miss, a concubine is no different from a servant. Naturally, it's up to the mistress to deal with her. When her voice fell, the 4 concubines finally closed their mouths. Concubine Chen looked at Qin Yining mockingly and said, "Fourth Miss, don't be too arrogant. First Madam hasn't said anything yet. What does it have to do with you?" "That's right, Fourth Miss is a young lady. It's best if you don't meddle in Madam's affairs," Concubine Hua also said. Qin Yining remained in her original position and instructed Mother Jean, "Go, call over a few sturdy women. Concubine Chen, Concubine Hua, Concubine Li, and Concubine Qian. These 4 haven't served father well for many years. Not only are they unable to provide for the family Qin, but they've also come to Madam's room to cause trouble. Using their status as concubines, they've offended the mistress. The family Qin doesn't want such disobedient servants. Call the slave traders to strip them of their embroidered clothes and gold and silver jewelry. Give each of them a set of coarse cotton padded jackets and sell them to a place where I can never see them again." Hearing Qin Yining's instructions, everyone was dumbfounded. The Sun clan finally regained their senses and stared blankly at their daughter. Mother Jean swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Fourth Miss was truly amazing. The concubines were also somewhat surprised. They had originally thought that Qin Yining was a barbarian. She was unruly with her words and liked to hit people. If she was angered this time and made a move, the Sun clan would no longer be in the right. Outsiders would think that the Sun clan's teachings were lacking and that they had raised a legitimate daughter into a poor family. They would also let the master see what kind of wife he had married. No one expected that Qin Yining wouldn't quarrel with them or hit them this time. Instead, she would directly sell them off. Concubine Chen sneered, "What a joke. I've served the master since I was young. Master hasn't even said anything, so what right do you have to sell me off?" "What right do I have?" Qin Yining stood up and smiled at Concubine Chen. "Naturally, it's because I'm the master and you're the servant." He turned around and instructed Mother Jean, "Why aren't you going?" When Mother Jean saw Qin Yining's independent attitude, she was immediately filled with pride and immediately went to call for help. However, Qin Huining grabbed Qin Yining's sleeve. "Sister Yi, how can you be like this? Father's wife isn't someone you can deal with as you please. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to rebel?" Qin Yining gently brushed away Qin Huining's hand and smiled warmly at her. "Don't be anxious. I'll deal with you later." Her voice wasn't loud and her attitude was gentle. She didn't seem as fierce as before. However, Qin Huining felt a chill run down her spine. She was so frightened by her that her heart trembled and she couldn't help but take 2 steps back. Seeing Chao Yuqing eating snacks at the side, Qin Huining was barely able to suppress the panic in her heart. When Mother Jean sent people over, the news that Xingning Garden was going to sell concubines had been spread by the servants brought by the concubines. Everyone in the Fu knew about it. In Ci Shao Garden, Old Madam was smiling and talking with Second Furen and Third Furen. When she heard that such a thing had happened in Xingning Garden, she immediately roared in anger, "Ridiculous, ridiculous. That hen that can't lay eggs. She can't lay an egg herself, yet she wants to sell it to the people around Menggu. Who gave her such guts?" The one who replied was Ru Yi. Ru Yi raised her eyes to look at Mammy Qin and said nervously, replying to Old Madam, "This matter wasn't ordered by eldest Furen, but by fourth young Mississippi." Chapter 99. Old Madam got up angrily and was about to go outside. Second Furen and Third Furen looked at each other, and there was a flash of interest in their eyes. Although they couldn't get used to Old Madam's fawning face of currying favor with those in power, Second Branch and Third Branch had always been different from the eldest branch. Especially the Second Branch. Third Old Master was a concubine's son. Old Madam didn't love him, but she had to rely on the third branch's money. But what about the second branch? How much lower was the second legitimate son than the eldest legitimate son? However, Mammy Chin came forward to support Old Madam's arm and gently advised, "Old Madam, don't worry. Let's put on the cloak and wear something warm before going out. Old Madam is a person who is pregnant. If you get blown by the wind and catch a cold, it won't be a joke." Mammy Chin's voice was slow and unhurried. She was wholeheartedly thinking for Old Madam, so Old Madam was naturally willing to listen. While letting Mammy Chin help her put on the cloak and warm hat, Old Madam still cursed, "I think that girl wants to ride on my head. It's only been a few days, and she dares to act like this. What does she want to do in front of Chowsher? Doesn't she think about our family's current difficulties?" Although Mammy Chin wholeheartedly served Old Madam, sometimes she couldn't bear to see Old Madam do those extreme things. However, as a servant, she couldn't persuade her. Seeing Old Madam talking about it, she took the opportunity to persuade her, "Old Madam, don't be angry. Children and grandchildren have their own fortune. You always get angry because of children and grandchildren. How is it good for your health? What's more, look at First Old Master's attitude. When didn't he let fourth young lady do it?" In this servant's opinion, First Old Master loves fourth young lady to the bottom of his heart and nurtures her like a son. With First Old Master's character and talent, what he does and thinks is naturally not something that a crude person like this servant can understand. However, this servant knows that First Old Master has his own reasons for doing things since he was young. After so many years of experience in the officialdom, First Old Master has become more and more outstanding, and his judgment of people has become more and more unique. Since First Old Master has allowed fourth young miss to do it, I think the current situation is what First Old Master wants to see. Qin Huayuan was the Old Madam's weak spot. After Mammy Chin flattered her, the anger in the Old Madam's heart had mostly dissipated. Thinking carefully about the meaning of Mammy Chin's words, it made sense. Although Dowager Duchess was angry at Qin Yining for being so overbearing, at this moment, she also felt that perhaps this was Qin Huayuan's secret instruction. She wanted to ask Qin Huayuan for his opinion, but today was the 6th day of the first lunar month, and there was going to be a court meeting in the imperial court. It was uncertain when Qin Huayuan would return. At this point, the Dowager Duchess's attention had been diverted, and her anger had mostly dissipated. Seeing the Dowager Duchess like this, second foreign and third foreign couldn't say anything more. They all knew that although the Dowager Duchess was impulsive, Mammy Chin was shrewd. If they said something wrong and Mammy Chin held a grudge, the Dowager Duchess would believe them no matter how much they said behind their backs. When the group of people hurried to Xingning Garden, the sturdy female servants had already helped the 4 Yinyangs change their clothes. They looked so beautiful when they came just now, but now they looked so battered and exhausted. The female servants dragged the Yinyangs out. Yinyang Chen hugged the pillar with tears and snot flowing down her face, and Yinyang Hua was lying on the ground with her hands clinging to the base of the platform. The sounds of cursing and crying were endless in the courtyard. Qin Yining was supporting the Sun clan as they stood in front of the main room and looked at the chaotic scene. Qin Huining was accompanying Chao Yuqing. Seeing the Dowager Duchess come, Qin Yining smiled and supported the Sun clan as they walked down the steps and saluted, "Grandmother is here." Greetings to the Dowager Duchess. The Sun clan and Chao Yuqing also saluted. The Dowager Duchess's face was calm. "I want to be well, but you don't let me be at ease." "How can I be well?" "Sun clan, what are you doing? It's not even the first month yet, and you dare to cause such a thing. The emperor has always ruled the country with benevolence. In our Dian dynasty, there's no noble family that would beat or kill a servant. If you want to do it lightly." The Sun clan was angry these days. The Dowager Duchess's indifference and heartlessness had already hurt her heart. Now that she was being reprimanded, with her temperament, how could she be willing to suffer this loss? Who knew that without waiting for her to speak, Qin Yining had already pulled her hand and saluted first. Dowager Duchess, please calm down. Granddaughter didn't want to beat or kill them. It's just that they didn't serve well and sold them. Moreover, today's matter wasn't mother's idea, but granddaughter's idea. The Dowager Duchess's sharp gaze glared at Qin Yining. Her finger, which was wearing a gold-studded jade ring, pointed at Qin Yining's nose. Even if you didn't say it, I still wanted to find you. You wild hussy who causes trouble in the family, quickly kneel down. Qin Huaining, who was at the side, couldn't help but curve the corners of his mouth in delight. Now, let's see who will be the first to be taken care of. Qin Yining didn't care at all. Just as he was about to obey the order to kneel down, his arm was held by a strong hand. When he turned around, he saw Chao Yuqing's beautiful face. Dowager Duchess, please calm down. Chao Yuqing's face was full of smiles. Her arm firmly held on to Qin Yining, not letting him kneel down. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, Qin Yining wouldn't have thought that Chao Yuqing had such great strength. Qin Huaining was also very surprised. He didn't understand why Chao Yuqing was still helping Qin Yining when he had already recognized her as his adoptive mother. Dowager Duchess, this concubine has overstepped the bounds. The weather is cold and the ground is frozen. Fourth young miss is a girl. How can she endure kneeling on this cold stone ground? If by any chance she becomes ill, Laoi will be distressed. When the Dowager Duchess heard this, she couldn't help but feel happy. Chao Yuqing was born with a bright appearance and never put on the airs of the eldest young miss of the Chao family. She was always polite and obedient to her mother-in-law. Moreover, she always considered everything from Qin Huaiyuan's perspective and thought for her husband. When she wanted to punish Qin Yining by kneeling, the Sun clan's biological mother was still angry and didn't stop her. However, Chao Yuqing was able to do this. The Dowager Duchess nodded and said to Qin Yining, for the sake of your concubine mother Chao, I'll spare you. Tell me, what's going on in this courtyard? Who gave you the courage to sell these concubines? Qin Yining didn't know what Chao Yuqing wanted to do, but he didn't have time to think. He walked to the Dowager Duchess's side and said in a low voice, Grandmother, please step aside to talk. Granddaughter has something to say. When the Dowager Duchess saw Qin Yining's serious expression, she followed her to the side. Qin Yining whispered in the Dowager Duchess's ear, Dowager Duchess, these concubines didn't abide by the rules. Originally, Granddaughter thought that Dowager Duchess was benevolent and didn't mind that they didn't have children for many years. Granddaughter thought that they were raising some servants. Granddaughter thought that the rules in this manner couldn't be broken in their hands. Granddaughter didn't want father to be pointed at behind his back and said that he couldn't even find a concubine. Therefore, Granddaughter decided to sell them. What's more, now that concubine Mother Chao has entered the manor, think about it. Do we still need other concubines in this courtyard? The Dowager Duchess didn't want to hear what Qin Yining said in the beginning. The Dowager Duchess only heard the last sentence. That's right. Why didn't she think of it earlier? When Chao Yuqing entered the manor, she had no choice but to take the place of the Sun clan. That was the difference between the legitimate wife and the concubines. However, in Qin Huaiyuan's inner residence, other than the legitimate wife, if there were concubines who were on the same level as Madame Chao, wouldn't that make Madame Chao unhappy? Therefore, Qin Yining wanted to punish these concubines today. Could it be that he was seizing the opportunity to show off and help Qin Huaiyuan clean up the harem? When the Dowager Duchess thought about it this way, she felt that there was nothing wrong with Qin Yining making a big deal out of this matter and selling the concubines. As the Dowager Duchess, she must be able to distinguish between the priorities. Qin Huaiyuan originally wasn't enthusiastic about those 4 concubines. His attitude was that they were dispensable. Looking at it this way, it was enough for him to only have one wife and one concubine. Thinking of this, the Dowager Duchess immediately nodded. She turned around and instructed, "What are you still standing there for? Quickly drive these 4 lowly servants out of the manor. You dare to shout and shout in front of the first madam. Do you think the family Qin is easy to bully? The family Qin raised you and didn't mind that you didn't have children for many years. You actually dare to throw your weight around." Everyone was dumbstruck. Chapter 100. The Yin-Yangs originally thought that based on old madam's recent attitude towards the Sun clan, she would definitely help them this time and take the opportunity to ruthlessly trample on the Sun clan and Qin Yining. Unexpectedly, Qin Yining only whispered a few words in her ear and made old madam change her mind. Although the Sun clan was prone to jealousy, they didn't shortchange them in material matters. They were used to wearing red brocade in the family Qin and being pampered as servants. How could they endure the hardships of being ordinary servants? If they were sold, they wouldn't be able to eat and drink like this anymore. The 4 Yin-Yangs were so regretful that their intestines turned green. They shouldn't have stood out in order to curry favor with Chao Shi. Now that they thought about it, Chao Shi was also a Yin-Yangs with them and was of noble birth. How could she see them as her own people? After making such a fuss, not only did they not get their revenge, but they also ruined their own future. They had dug a hole for Madame Chao and buried themselves in it. "Old madam, please have mercy. We know our mistake. First madam, please have mercy." The Yin-Yangs cried and begged for mercy. The crafty, domineering, and mocking expressions from before were completely gone. However, the servants ruthlessly pulled them out. If they couldn't be pulled out, they twisted their waists and backs a few more times. It was so painful that they had no choice but to let go of the corridor pillar. Previously, they only had Qin Yining's instructions, so they didn't have any confidence. Now that they had old madam's words, they didn't have any worries. Hearing these Yin-Yang's unreasonable noises, some servants simply untied the handkerchiefs on the Yin-Yang's waists and stuffed them into their mouths. Xingning Garden quickly regained its tranquility. The remaining servants in the courtyard now looked at Qin Yining and the Sun clan differently. Who said that the first madam had fallen out of favor? Who said that the 4th miss had fallen out of favor? If she had really fallen out of favor, why would old madam support the 4th miss and the first madam so happily? Those 4 Yin-Yangs hadn't just entered the manor for a day or two. They dared to be disrespectful to the first madam and the 4th miss, so they were still sold. Fortunately, they didn't disrespect first madam and 4th Mississippi, otherwise, it would be their turn to be punished and sold today. Qin Yining's beautiful eyes swept across the expressions of everyone in the courtyard, and she knew that she had achieved her goal. It seemed that as long as what he said was true to old madam's thoughts, it wouldn't be difficult to use old madam as a knife. This time, she didn't confront him head-on. She achieved her goal as usual. Today, if she didn't take the opportunity to use those 4 concubines to set the rules, she was afraid that in the future, even the lowly servants would dare to bully her and her mother. Qin Yining was naturally very grateful for old madam's help. He smiled and invited her into the room to have tea. When the matriarch saw everyone's expressions, she thought about how, although her actions had curried favor with Madame Chao, she had also helped the Sun clan and Qin Yining. She immediately realized that she had been schemed against by Qin Yining, and that she had been willing to be schemed against. She couldn't help but feel a little irritable after being used. She didn't want to talk to Qin Yining and the Sun clan again, lest she die of anger. The matriarch turned around and left. Qin Yining didn't care about old madam's attitude and respectfully sent her off with everyone else. Second madam and third madam, who supported old madam on either side, changed their evaluation of the Sun clan once again after seeing Qin Yining's way of handling matters. The Sun clan was a group of reckless, willful, domineering, and brainless people. However, Qin Yining was different. Not to mention that Qin Huaiyuan knew the internal affairs of the inner residence like the back of his hand. Even if Qin Huaiyuan didn't care about the internal affairs of the inner residence, now that the Sun clan had Qin Yining by their side, it would be even more difficult for the second and third branches to have any differences with the eldest branch. After everyone left, Chao Yuqing smiled and nodded to the Sun clan. Then, she smiled at Qin Yining and said, "Fourth Miss is extremely intelligent. This concubine admires you very much. In the future, if you have free time, you are welcome to come visit this concubine at any time." The Sun clan glared at Chao Yuqing with eyes full of anger. However, as usual, Qin Yining didn't give the Sun clan a chance to speak. He smiled and nodded, "Thank you very much for today, concubine Chao." Chao Yuqing smiled, "Fourth Miss, you don't have to be so polite." This concubine only lifted a finger. The two looked at each other. Both of them had an ambiguous smile on their beautiful faces. When their eyes met, they both understood that Qin Yining's "thank you" and Chao Yuqing's "lifted a finger" were definitely not referring to the old madam punishing Qin Yining to kneel and pleading for leniency on Chao Yuqing's behalf. How many days had it been since Chao Yuqing entered the family? She had used Qin Yining's hands to easily get rid of 4 opponents without shedding a drop of blood. What kind of scheming was this? Qin Yining used this matter to not only re-establish the Sun clan's prestige, but he also forced the old madam to not publicly support the Sun clan's practice of selling concubines. This also made the servants pay more attention to the Sun clan and Qin Yining. This matter was a win-win situation for both of them. Qin Yining understood, and Chao Yuqing also understood. The two looked at each other for a moment, and they both revealed a tacit smile. On the side, the Sun clan didn't understand what kind of riddle Qin Yining and Chao Yuqing were playing, but she vaguely felt that there was something going on. At this time, Qin Yining was almost drowning in jealousy and hatred. She didn't understand why she was still in a disadvantageous position in front of Qin Yining even though she had already successfully acknowledged Chao Yuqing as her adoptive mother. Qin Yining clearly only had the Sun clan, who was used to dragging him down, by his side. Why did she have to live happily? Why would Madame Chao treat Qin Yining so well and even take the initiative to plead for mercy for Qin Yining? Qin Yining thought about it, but couldn't understand how these two people, who had just met for the first time, interacted. She only knew that her decision to risk everything and bear the infamy of taking advantage of the situation didn't give her a bargaining chip to suppress Qin Yining. This was enough to make her angry. After Chao Yuqing and Qin Yining left, Qin Yining helped the Sun clan into the room to eat. Speaking of today's matter, Qin Yining gave a brief explanation. Only then did the Sun clan completely understand Chao Yuqing's scheming and Qin Yining's intentions. They couldn't help but be more convinced of their daughter's quick-wittedness and methods. The news that Qin Yining sent away the 4 concubines with a few words and even received the old madam's support had already spread throughout the entire residence. The old madam originally thought that after Qin Huaiyuan returned to the residence and heard that his 4 concubines had been sold, he would at least ask about it. She had even thought of how to explain it. Who would have thought that after Qin Huaiyuan returned to the residence, he would lock himself in his study? He even missed the time to come to Xiaishao Garden to pay his respects. The old madam sent someone to ask, but she didn't see him come out. Second Master Qin Shouyuan, who also had the opportunity to participate in the court assembly, passed a shocking and unexpected piece of news to the ears of the entire family. "What did you say?" "Say it again." "De Zhou wants to negotiate peace with us." "That's right." Qin Shouyuan nodded and said, "During today's court assembly, De Zhou's envoy said that he wants to negotiate peace with us. The location of the negotiation will be in the military camp outside Xihua City." After several discussions, eldest brother successfully won. The emperor personally appointed eldest brother as the peace ambassador. Good, good. The old madam happily danced and repeatedly cheered. Not only the old madam, but the other womenfolk also revealed smiles. Whoever came forward to negotiate peace between Dezhou and Dian would have a great merit and their name would be recorded in the annals of history. Qin Huaiyuan was now the crown prince's imperial tutor. If he successfully presided over the peace talks, in the future, his reputation among the people and in the history books would be splendidly recorded. The old madam repeatedly said, "Bring honor to our ancestors, bring honor to our ancestors." However, this is clearly a good thing. Why is your eldest brother still gloomy and unwilling to see anyone after returning to the residence? When Qin Shouyuan heard this, his expression finally revealed some abnormality. Replying, "Mother, it's like this. The choice of the peace ambassador was between Chao Guozhang and eldest brother. After the emperor appointed eldest brother, Chao Guozhang gave the emperor a rotten idea." The old madam leaned forward and widened her eyes as she said, "Quickly say it, what rotten idea?" Qin Shouyuan muttered, "Chao Guozhang said that Dezhou's minister of war, Lianxingjie, will be the one presiding over the peace talks. This person is the most skilled at currying favor and is very crafty. Fortunately, this person has a weakness, and that is, he is lecherous. Chao Guozhang suggested that the emperor use a honey trap on this person." When the emperor heard this, he felt that it was very reasonable and directly said that even heroes have a weakness for the charms of a beauty. The honey trap was very good. Just as the emperor agreed, Chao Guozhang said that Grand Preceptor Qin has a good reputation for wisdom. "I heard that the daughter of the first wife of the Qin clan resembles her father. Presumably, she has a devastatingly beautiful appearance. In order to facilitate the peace talks between the two countries, if Grand Preceptor Qin is willing to offer your beloved, it will also be a great merit." What? The old madam's mind buzzed when she heard this. She still wanted to keep Qin Yining to marry the crown prince. If this time, it was used for the peace talks, wouldn't this move be wasted? She had heard of that Lianxingjie. It was said that he was an old sex fiend. If Qin Yining went to the peace talks, her chastity would be lost. It wasn't easy for their family to have such a suitable daughter to be the crown prince's consort, but she had to be sacrificed for the peace talks. The old madam anxiously said, "Then what did the emperor say? Did the emperor agree?" Qin Shouyuan sighed and nodded. "The emperor has already issued a decree. He ordered eldest brother to set off in 10 days and take sister Yi to the peace talks. They must facilitate the success of the peace talks. Otherwise, they will be beheaded. That's why eldest brother is so depressed." Qin Shouyuan's words made everyone in the room as if they were frozen in silence. Everyone knew that the imperial decree had been issued. If Qin Huaiyuan couldn't bear to part with his daughter, it was possible that the entire family Qin would be destroyed. The family Qin wouldn't abandon their many years of business to protect a woman. Then, Qin Yining's sacrifice was inevitable. The old madam sat upright in her seat and pursed her lips without speaking. Everyone looked at each other, each with their own thoughts. At this time, at the cloud stepping in, Peng Xiao had just ordered Huzi to send Bing Tang back when he received a report from his subordinates. He stood in front of the window wearing a black mink fur cloak. After reading the note in his hand, he threw it into the charcoal brazier with a grave expression. He lowered his head to look at the flickering charcoal fire with a frown. Huzi entered the room and saw Peng Xiao's ugly expression. He asked worriedly, "Master, are you okay? Is your wound uncomfortable?" Peng Xiao's face was pale, but under his anger, his phoenix eyes seemed to be burning with 2 balls of fire. Huzi shuddered and took 2 steps back. Peng Xiao was silent for a moment. Then, he angrily kicked over the charcoal brazier. The charcoal in the brazier scattered all over the floor. Huzi was so scared that he hurriedly poured a basin of water on it. Master, what's wrong? Pang Shao angrily cursed, fuck that old dog Yuqi. Your Majesty ordered Lian Xingjie to preside over the peace talks with the Dayan. The Yan Emperor wants to give Qin Si to Lian Xingjie. Ah! Huzi exclaimed. Chapter 101. Huzi knew that Wang Yi was in a fit of anger, so he didn't dare to ask. He took a broom and a dustpan, cleaned the floor, and ordered someone to put up the charcoal brazier. He then personally brewed a pot of weak tea for Pang Shao. Seeing that Pang Zhao's expression was slightly better, Huzi asked the question in his heart, why did your Majesty suddenly think of peace talks? We have always had the upper hand in the war. The Dayan should be the ones who want peace. Why did we bring this up first? Pang Shao lifted his clothes and sat down on a round-backed chair. His lips curved into a mocking smile, isn't it obvious? Huzi scratched his head, Master, I don't understand. We have been fighting with GCU for many years. After we won, we took over the devastated mess. After that, we started a war with Dayan. The Taitan in the north have been harassing us, burning, killing, and looting. GCU's troops in the north also need to be fed. How much money do you think we have in our treasury? But Dezhou's troops are strong and powerful. No matter how strong the troops, no matter how strong the horses, they still need to eat to have the strength to fight. Your Majesty immediately declared war on Dayan after ascending the throne. Is it just to unify the world? Huzi blinked his big eyes. After a long time, he let out a long "oh." I understand now. Your Majesty has taken a liking to Dayan's rich land. Moreover, they are soft persimmons. He wants to use the war to support the war. Pang Shao poured himself a cup of tea and slowly sipped it. Huzi spun around on the floor a few times and slapped his forehead. This time, Your Majesty doesn't really want peace talks, right? I'm afraid that the front line doesn't have enough money, so he's temporarily lying about peace talks. He wants to coax some money out of them so that he can continue fighting the Yan dynasty. Pang Shao nodded and stared at the white porcelain teacup in his hand. His eyes were unfathomable. TSK, this is going to be interesting. Those good-for-nothings of the Yan dynasty can't wait to negotiate with us. I'm afraid they've come with 120% sincerity. Otherwise, old dog Yuqi wouldn't have asked Qin Huaiyuan to hand over the fourth miss of the Qin dynasty. If they find out that they've been cheated after the peace talks, won't they be angered? The anger of the people of the Yan dynasty has long been ignited. Pang Shao turned the teacup up and down with his strong, calloused fingers. The old dog Yuqi doted on the demon empress and killed the loyal. Whether it was the death of Imperial Dr. Tang, the death of Sun Yuanming, or the execution of Ding General Manor, all the Dayan people saw how muddle-headed the Dayan emperor was. He was so afraid of death that he didn't care about the lives of the people and soldiers. Whenever he was in danger, the muddle-headed emperor would push his subjects out to block the knife for him. This is exactly what Your Majesty wants. Huzi understood and said, so Your Majesty said that he wanted Sun Yuanming's brain in order to make the people of the Yan dynasty angry and hate the muddle-headed emperor even more? Yes. With this, Huzi understood even more. This peace talk was not only to swindle money and use the Dayan's money to fight Dayan, but also to use the good reputation of Qin Huaiyuan to arouse the dissatisfaction of the Dayan people towards the muddle-headed emperor. Last time, in order to please Dezhou, the muddle-headed emperor and the demon empress wanted Sun Yuanming's brain. This time, they didn't even care about their face. They were big men, but they actually wanted to hide under a woman's skirt and push a beautiful girl out. Even if the old dog Yuqi had a clear conscience, any man of the Dayan people would only feel humiliated and angry. After all, Dezhou had just killed 20,000 Dayan captives. more than 20,000 men would never be able to return home. These 20,000 people had parents, relatives, and friends. The revenge of being killed was as deep as the ocean. The muddle-headed emperor did not support them and instead killed all the men of the Duc d'Ingwa's residence to please de Zhou. Now, he even wanted to give away Grand Preceptor Qin's daughter. With this, it would be even more difficult for the people of the Dian to work together. Huzi couldn't help but give a thumbs up to Emperor Zhou's shrewdness. Your Majesty is really smart. But what do you plan to do this time? Last time, you didn't agree to massacre the city, and your Majesty ordered people to kill the Dian captives in the blink of an eye. He achieved his goal of scaring the old dog Yuqi and also removed you from the position of Grand Marshal. This time, if you stop him, your Majesty will be even angrier. At that time, I don't know what will happen. Your tiger army is too fierce in battle and only listens to you. It has already caused people to be afraid. No matter what, Qin Si can only be mine. Pang Shao put down the teacup and said with certainty. I told you, Master, you must like Miss Qin Si. Pang Shao sneered, who said that I like her? Ah. Huzi opened his mouth in surprise. I will keep her by my side and look at her like a painting. Can't I? Huzi lowered his head and secretly curled his lips. Yes, Master, whatever you say. Pang Zhao's slender index finger tapped on the table. After a while, he said, since I was injured in order to save her, she only sent a maid to treat me. She didn't even look at me. Is this the attitude she should have towards her savior? Tomorrow, tell Bing Tang to tell her young miss that if Qin Si doesn't want to come to see me, I will go to her door to see her. After saying that, Pang Shao stood up and walked to the inner room. Huzi curled his lips again. He still said that he didn't like her. Didn't he see how abnormal his behavior was? He used to be a man who didn't care about women, but now he shamelessly forced a girl to come to see him. If Madame Dowager and Madame Dowager knew this, they would be so happy that their mouths would be crooked. Amitba. Finally, their precious son didn't have a strange hobby of splitting peaches. At this time, in the capital, the news that de Zhou took the initiative to ask for peace, and the emperor arranged Grand Preceptor Qin to preside over the peace talks and also ordered Grand Preceptor Qin to offer his legitimate daughter had already become the talk of the town. No one knew who spread the news, but everyone was saying that the Minister of War in de Zhou, Lian, was a lecher and had a strange hobby of abuse. No one knew how many flower-like girls he had abused and killed. In the blink of an eye, several versions of the news were spread. The more it spread, the more shocking it was. Many women and people who had daughters at home all broke out in a cold sweat for Grand Preceptor Qin's daughter. Soldiers in the army, civilians, scholars, and courtiers with a little conscience mourned the misfortune of Duke Ding, who had spent his whole life in the military. Now they heard that Duke Ding's granddaughter was going to be given to an old lecher. Not only was her chastity in danger, but her life was also in danger. Everyone was furious. People in many tea houses and wine shops secretly talked about this matter and cursed the fatuous emperor. The emperor had no choice but to send people from the Yamen to patrol the streets and catch rebels who dared to talk about the emperor. For a time, the whole capital was filled with a tense atmosphere. In Qin's mansion, Qin Yining naturally received the news. She didn't faint from fright like the members of the Sun clan, nor did she cry until her eyes were swollen like Bing Tang and Song Lan. She appeared to be very calm and collected. She was even able to sleep soundly. Chapter 102. Qin Yining got up and had Bing Tang and Song Lan serve her to wash and change her clothes. She put on a moon-white plain satin robe and a lake blue 8-piece skirt. Her hair was neatly tied into a cloud bun and held in place by a peachwood hairpin. She put on a sky blue satin cloak and left the Shuoran building with her maidservants. The Shuoran building was very close to old Madame Ci Shao garden. After walking for a while, she met Qin Huining and the sixth young miss who were going to greet old Madame. Qin Yining was always in a daze every day, but she had never been as attentive as Qin Huining and the sixth young miss. Today, when the two saw Qin Yining walking slowly in plain clothes, they thought that she was afraid after learning that she was going to be sent out for a peace talk, so she came to curry favor with old Madame. Qin Huining's eyes were full of contempt and no longer had the fear she had when she saw Qin Yining yesterday. She hugged her shoulders and sneered, then walked around Qin Yining. "Xiaoxi Mimi, it's a bit too late to make a last-minute effort. If you were more filial to old Madame, maybe old Madame would still cherish you and say a few good words for you. Maybe you can avoid the fate of serving the old sex fiend. But what about you? You don't know filial piety and always make old Madame angry. Now, if you want to die or not, who will care about you?" "That's right." The sixth young miss sneered, "Look at your seductive appearance. I don't know who gave you the right to be arrogant all day long. Let me tell you, even if you die, old Madame will send your corpse to the old sex fiend. Old Madame won't watch our family be like your maternal grandfather's family." Qin Yining looked at the two beautiful people and silently listened to their vicious words. She didn't immediately speak, but just stared at them. Qin Huining and the sixth young miss were sure that with Qin Yining's current situation, she wouldn't dare to be as domineering as before. They had been bullied for so long and finally found a chance to vent their anger. How could they not take advantage of it? However, Qin Yining didn't refute or beat them. She just quietly looked at them. Her eyes really made people feel scared. The two resisted and didn't retreat half a step. Instead, they stared back at her with ridicule. The sixth young miss even cursed, "You're just a barbarian. To let you flaunt your power in the Qin manner for so many days is already God's favor to you. This time, after you serve that old sex fiend, if you come back alive, presumably, the Qin family won't be unable to support you." Qin Yining's long eyelashes fluttered, and she suddenly lowered her head, feeling wronged. Her plain dress was very conspicuous among the women wearing red brocade. At this time, she was forced by fate into such a situation. Your Majesty's decree was something she couldn't refuse. She also had to face the insults of her cousins. They kept calling her serving the sex fiend and a ruined flower. Even an adult woman might not be able to endure this kind of humiliation, let alone an unmarried young girl. The sixth young miss and Qin Huining looked at her wronged appearance and only had one word in their hearts: great. The sixth young miss became even more unrestrained. "Aren't you usually very powerful? Isn't it that no one can win against you in words and fighting? Now, you go to old Madame and show off your power as usual. See if old Madame is willing to help you. Don't think that you. This is second sister-in-law's upbringing. I can be considered to have seen it." Suddenly, a low and angry male voice came from behind Qin Huining and the sixth young miss. The two of them were so frightened that their bodies trembled. They widened their eyes in disbelief and slowly turned around. They saw Qin Huiyuan, who was wearing a gray rat fur cloak, standing not far away with his hands behind his back. Next to Qin Huiyuan, second master Qin Shouyuan angrily glared at the sixth young miss with an ashen face. The sixth young miss's mind buzzed. She was so frightened that her knees went soft and she knelt down with a plop. Qin Huining was also scared stiff. No wonder Qin Yining didn't talk back just now. She had seen Qin Huiyuan and Qin Shouyuan coming early on. Not only did they not stop them from continuing to talk, but they also deliberately allowed them to say vicious words. She knew that with Qin Yining's poor temperament, she unexpectedly didn't talk back when scolded today. It turned out that she was waiting here. Qin Huiyuan looked at Qin Huining and the sixth young miss with a sullen face. Although he didn't say anything, his aura was frightening. Qin Shuoyuan hurriedly said, "Eldest brother, please calm down. I will definitely discipline the sixth young miss well." Qin Huayuan nodded and went straight to Qin Yining. Qin Huining and the sixth young miss were so scared that their faces turned pale. They stepped aside to make a path for him. Qin Huayuan stood in front of his daughter and stared at her for a moment. He touched Qin Yining's head with his big hand and lovingly helped her adjust her cloak. He then said, "Let's go. Follow father to the outer courtyard for breakfast." "Yes." Qin Yining touched her forehead that was touched by Qin Huayuan. She couldn't help but smile cutely. She walked beside Qin Huayuan and the two walked out side by side. Qin Yining didn't even look at Qin Huining and the sixth young miss. Shrimp soldiers and crab generals were nothing to be afraid of. If she didn't say anything, someone would deal with them. Qin Yining took Bing Tang and Song Lan and followed Qin Huayuan out of the second gate. Only then did he ask, "Father, didn't you send someone to call me? Why can't you wait for me to come in?" Qin Huayuan didn't answer and just casually responded. Qin Yining saw him like this and knew that his father was concentrating on thinking, so he didn't say anything else. The two of them went to the courtyard where the study was located. Qin Huayuan took Qin Yining to the side hall to eat first. There were 6 small plates of tasty and refreshing dishes, fragrant rice porridge, a large plate of steaming buns and steamed buns, and 2 plates of green stir-fried vegetables. The food that looked, smelled, and tasted good could usually arouse people's appetite, but today, the father and daughter didn't have much of an appetite. They only ate a little before putting down their chopsticks. Qin Huayuan sighed and said, "You already know, right?" "Yes." Qin Yining said, "The news has already spread. It's hard for your daughter not to know." Qin Huayuan frowned and looked at the steaming hot food in front of him. He didn't say anything for a long time. Qin Yining saw that Qin Huayuan was in a difficult position and said with a smile, "Father, the imperial edict has already been issued. You can't disobey the imperial edict, and you can't disregard the life and death of our family. Your daughter will go with you." Qin Huayuan suddenly raised his head and looked at Qin Yining's carefree smiling face. He said, "Sister Yi, aren't you afraid? Don't you have any resentment?" Once such a major event happened, not to mention whether she could keep her chastity in life, her reputation as a woman of the boudoir would be completely ruined. An ordinary woman would have already committed suicide by now. Qin Yining was able to live peacefully. She didn't threaten him with death, nor did she try to escape secretly. Qin Huayuan already felt that she was extremely sensible. Who would have thought she could still comfort him with a smile? She was clearly the one who was hurt. All sorts of feelings welled up in Qin Huayuan's heart. His eyes became hot and he almost couldn't control his emotions. Qin Yining looked at her father's dark eyes and hesitated expression. What else did she not understand? The matter of Duke Ding's mansion is right in front of us. At this critical juncture, no matter if I escape or die, it will only bring disaster to our family. The only thing I can do now is to calmly wait for 9 days and set off with my father to Xihua City. I will try my best to facilitate the peace talks. I can't let this sacrifice be in vain. As long as our family can be safe and sound, and as long as I can survive by a fluke, I will be content. As for the rest of my chastity and reputation, I don't want to think about it. Father, don't think too much about it. Sister Yi. Qin Huayuan didn't expect Qin Yining to be so calm and rational at such a critical moment. At this time, wasn't she the most wronged and innocent person? Father, don't be sad. I've seen too much life and death in the outside world. Children from poor families usually die from bumping into things, being hit by carriages, being eaten by wild wolves and dogs, falling into the water and drowning. Human life is precious, but in some people's eyes, human life is the most worthless. When bandits massacre a city, or when there's no food to eat in a disaster year, a poor family can only sell a healthy girl in exchange for half a bag of Korean noodles. Chapter 103. Qin Huaiyuan looked at Qin Yining quietly, as if he had only truly understood his daughter for the first time. She was like a flower that had left its greenhouse prematurely, struggling to survive in the cracks of the rocks, accepting the devastation of the storm, but surviving with the most tenacious willpower, and even blooming the most beautiful flower. She had always been a child who could surprise him. She was always learning and improving. Every time he was surprised to find that she had a new side to her, she would soon show him a brighter side. Compared to those ordinary young ladies who had been raised in their boudoirs, her intelligence, courage, ability, and means had long surpassed ordinary people. Now, she even had a heart that many men couldn't compare with. Qin Huaiyuan felt comforted, but more than that, he felt guilty. How much pain did a girl who hadn't reached marriageable age have to go through to have the heart and courage to see through the storm? How much helplessness did she have to go through? How much was she destroyed by the cruel reality to learn to calmly accept her fate at such a young age? How could this child be so sensible and so lovable? Qin Huaiyuan stretched his arm across the square table and touched Qin Yining's head. He said in a hoarse voice, "Father has let you down." "Father, what are you talking about?" Qin Yining looked at Qin Huaiyuan with her misty eyes. "Father, you didn't let me down, not at all. I believe that if you had the slightest idea, you wouldn't have taken me there. But the imperial edict has been issued. Father can't be accused of disobeying the imperial edict just to protect me. Father is not only my father, but also the head of the family. The tragedy of Ding General Manor can't happen to our family again. I usually enjoy the convenience of being the Grand Preceptor's legitimate daughter. It doesn't make sense that I can't bear the danger together with you. If we can only enjoy happiness and can't share trials and tribulations, how can we be called a family? If that's really the case, I don't deserve to be Father's daughter." "Good. Good." Tears welled up in Qin Huaiyuan's eyes. After so many years in the imperial court, Qin Huaiyuan felt like he was about to be trained into a copper pea. Now, he couldn't help but feel his nose ache after hearing his daughter's words. He raised his head and blinked hard. After a while, he returned to his usual appearance and sighed, "Sister E, no matter how open-minded you are, Father knows that I was wrong to you. Promise me that no matter what happens in the future, you will try your best to survive." What he was most worried about was that a pure and innocent girl like her would commit suicide because she couldn't bear the humiliation. "Of course. I'm very greedy for life." Qin Yining knew what Qin Huaiyuan was worried about. He smiled and said, "It wasn't easy for me to survive until now. I've put in a lot of effort to keep my life. I don't want to waste all that effort." "Good child." Qin Huaiyuan could finally relax when he saw how sincere his sister was. She was truly open-minded and not coaxing him just to comfort him. Infected by Qin Yining's unhurried and positive attitude, Qin Huaiyuan finally released some of the foul air that had been suppressed in his chest all night. Qin Yining sat for a while and then took his leave and returned to the Shuoran study. Qin Huaiyuan thought about what Lu Xiaojia and Qin Huining had said and done just now. Comparing it to Qin Yining's sensible and obedient behavior, he felt even more indignant for Qin Yining. He made up his mind to support Qin Yining and vent his anger. After thinking about it, he personally went to the old Madam's Xixiao garden. Qin Yining returned to the Shuoran study. He had endured Bing Tang and Song Lan the whole way. As soon as he entered the door, he began to wipe his tears. They were waiting outside just now and heard the conversation between Qin Yining and Qin Huaiyuan clearly. They were moved by the affection between father and daughter and sighed at Qin Yining's steadiness. However, they were more angry and resentful. It's not enough that the fatuous ruler has harmed my family and so many innocent people. Now he wants to harm a young lady. Bing Tang sobbed. She wiped her tears hard and rubbed her apple-like face red. Qin Yining took a handkerchief and handed it to her. Keep your voice down. Be careful. The walls have ears. I'm not the only one who cursed the fatuous ruler. That old bastard should have died long ago. Bing Tang remembered how well Qin Yining treated her. He wholeheartedly planned for her future. Qin Yining never coveted the money she earned from selling ointments and cosmetics. He even tried his best to help her open up new business opportunities. When the family members of the civil officials sent gifts, Qin Yining gave them to her without hiding anything. The care and concern he gave her in her daily life was not just a little bit. Such an upright and kind-hearted person was now being molested by an old pervert because of the fatuous ruler's words. Why didn't the fatuous ruler choke to death on food and water? Song Lan, Chiu Lu, Luya, and Zhu Mama also sobbed sadly. Qin Yining saw them like this and felt bad in his heart. It would be a lie to say that she didn't feel resentment or fear. It was just that she had seen too much darkness and struggled at the bottom for too long. She learned how to accept her fate and how to fight according to fate's arrangements. Since it was something that couldn't be changed, there was no point in worrying about it and being afraid. What she needed to think about now was how to survive the peace talks and how to live a good life in the future. When the servants saw how calm Qin Yining was, it would be bad if they continued to cry, so they wiped their tears. Bing Tang blew his nose and then remembered the important matter. He pulled Qin Yining to a corner and whispered, "Miss, the young master in the inn sent someone to send you a letter today. He said that you didn't visit him for so many days and that it was perfunctory. He asked if you have forgotten about his life-saving grace and don't want to care about him anymore." Hearing this, Qin Yining was stunned and smiled awkwardly. She didn't forget Yao Zhishi's life-saving grace, but her mother had been suppressed these days and was in a bad mood. She was so busy with the matters in the inner residence that her head was in a mess. Bing Tang went to treat Yao Zhishi with acupuncture every day and she would also ask about the progress of the treatment. However, she never thought of personally visiting him. Qin Yining thought about it and said, "Forget it, I'll go take a look. I have to leave on the 16th of the first month and there are still 9 days left. I don't know what arrangements the emperor has for me during this time. Why don't I take advantage of today's free time to go see him and say goodbye?" The word goodbye made people feel uncomfortable. Bing Tang nodded silently and went to order people to prepare the carriage. Qin Yining took Bing Tang, Song Lan, and Chiu Lu back to Qin Huayuan and left. Old Madam's heart was biased to the extreme and Qin Yining avoided interacting with her. Pang Xiao had specially bathed and changed his clothes today and changed into a moon-white brocade robe. At this time, he was sitting on the arhat bed next to the window and reading a book. He sat upright with a focused expression and was reading very seriously. However, he hadn't flipped a single page of the book since he woke up this morning. Huzi went back and forth to pour tea and water. Seeing Pang Zhao's seemingly refined but actually daydreaming appearance, his mouth was about to become crooked. If fourth Miss Qin didn't come today, Master would probably go crazy. Just as he was thinking this, he suddenly saw his master stand up. Immediately, Huzi heard the sound of light footsteps and a woman's voice outside. Huzi sighed and went out to greet them. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Wang Yi sit down again with an indifferent expression. Chapter 104. Qin Yining nodded to Huzi. "Is your young master feeling better?" Huzi said with a smile, "Miss Potato's needle skills are amazing. Young master is much better now." "You're the potato." Bing Tang stomped her feet in anger. "Kitty, I'm warning you. I'm in a fit of anger today. If you call me a potato again, I'll get angry with you. Hey! You're still calling me kitty. Huzi stuck his tongue out at Bing-Tang. What can you do even if you get angry with me, little potato? Bing-Tang's apple-like face was red with anger. She glared at Huzi with her big eyes and pulled out a silver needle used for acupuncture and was about to stab him. Huzi felt comfortable being stared at by her and laughed even more happily. He jumped away and let Bing-Tang chase after him. Qin Yining looked at Song Lan and Qiu Lu. He smiled and said, "Wait for me outside." Yes. Song Lan and Qiu Lu bowed and left. Qin Yining entered the room and walked slowly to the inner room. Passing through the floor-to-ceiling window, he saw Yao Zhishi lazily leaning on the Arhat bed next to the window, reading a book. The sun shone through the paper behind him, outlining his tall figure with a faint golden halo. His ink-like and sable fur collar were sprinkled with a layer of starlight, dyeing his well-defined and tough facial features with a bit of gentleness. The scene in front of her gave her a feeling of peace and serenity. This was a feeling she had never felt before. Qin Yining couldn't help but laugh. His voice was also tinged with a gentle smile. "Young Master Yao." Pang Shao heard her voice and couldn't help but smile. However, he still stubbornly maintained his posture of reading a book. He didn't even raise his head and said lazily, "What a rare guest. I thought you had already forgotten about me." His tone sounded sour no matter how one listened to it. Qin Yining said apologetically, "I've always been concerned about your injuries. It's just that something happened at home, so I couldn't find the time. Fortunately, Bing-Tang would update me about your condition every day. Knowing that Gongzi's condition is improving, I'm relieved." Pang Shao snorted. He raised his head and cast a sidelong glance at her. "What you say sounds good." He sat cross-legged lazily. When he lifted his chin and looked at Qin Yining, his almond-shaped eyes seemed to sparkle. Only then did Qin Yining realize that this person's eyelashes were very long, and his eyes were very handsome. When Qin Yining saw him like this, he inexplicably thought of the leader of the herd of wild horses that had once saved him. It was just as handsome, just as fierce, and obviously had an extremely irritable temper. If they were to meet head-on, it wouldn't let anyone ride it even if it was beaten to death. In order to repay the kindness of accompanying it, she took the initiative to cut grass and feed it, and took the initiative to bathe it. That fiery head horse was actually willing to let her ride it. So to deal with this kind of temper, no matter if it was a wild horse or a wild Gongzi Yao, the only way was to appease it. Thinking of this, Qin Yining's smile became even warmer. He bowed sincerely and said, "It's my fault for neglecting you recently. It's really because something happened at home." After thinking for a while, he continued, "You also know about my family situation. Chao Guo's eldest daughter has become my father's concubine. The situation in the Fu has changed, and my mother's temper isn't liked by old madam. These few days have been really hard. I wasn't able to come and see you, so I'm really neglecting you. Gongzi Yao is a magnanimous person, so please don't blame this little girl." She was willing to talk about her family situation with him, which meant that she didn't treat him as an outsider. Although Pang Shao had many ways to find out about her family Qin, these words came from Qin Yining's mouth. Even if she only said a few words, it still made Pang Shao feel happy. Pang Shao snorted again. There was a smile at the corners of his eyes and eyebrows. He proudly raised his chin and said, "Forget it. Since you sincerely admit your mistake, this Gongzi is a magnanimous person and reluctantly won't bicker with you." Qin Yining beamed with joy and said, "Then thank you very much." "What are you smiling for? It's so ugly." Pang Shao looked at her smiling face and only felt a numbness on his back. Even his brain was about to go numb. His neck and ears turned red, and he forced himself to look away with a cold face. A few days ago, you said that you would be responsible for me and would serve me for a lifetime. You even called me Dada, but you refused to pay attention to me. I thought that you were ungrateful and didn't intend to repay me. Qin Yining's face turned red. Dada was an intimate name a woman used to call a man when lovers or husband and wife talked in private. Qin Yining also heard it by chance when he was listening to a book in the marketplace. Last time, he deliberately tricked her into calling him Yao Dada. The homonym was Dada. Thinking of his indecent behavior, Qin Yining used a lot of strength to stop himself from murdering his savior. Huzi had had enough of Bing Tang by now. He smiled and brought over a teacup. "Fourth miss, please have some tea." Qin Yining sat down on a round-backed chair with a thick cushion. He lowered his head and sipped his tea, refusing to pay attention to him anymore. Pang Shao, however, held his chin. While Qin Yining was not looking at him, he unscrupulously admired the beauty. He hadn't seen her for many days. She was still so bright and beautiful. She was dressed in plain clothes without any makeup or jewelry. Her whole person was clean and pure like a pool of spring water. The way she quietly sipped her tea was as beautiful as a painting. She was also as obedient as a little white rabbit, making people want to feed her with carrots and vegetables. Pang Shao naturally knew that Qin Yining was smart and powerful. But in his eyes, Qin Yining's power was like a little white rabbit scratching someone when it was provoked. It was harmless. It was really strange. In the past, when he saw a little white rabbit, he would only think about whether to roast it or braise it. But now, he wanted to raise one. He wanted to hold it in his arms, pull the rabbit's ears, and rub the little white rabbit's round and chubby little butt. Pang Zhao's eyes fell on Qin Yining's slightly thin and undeveloped body. TSK. This rabbit is too thin. He needs to feed more carrots. Young Master Yao. Qin Yining felt uncomfortable under his stare. She finally couldn't stand it anymore. She put down her teacup and glared at him. It was just that she was too beautiful. She wasn't really angry or murderous. Her eyes were bright and watery, and she didn't look imposing at all. Pang Shao was amused by her soft and obedient appearance. He almost couldn't help but touch her face. Forget it. I won't tease you anymore. If she really got angry, it wouldn't be easy to coax her in the future. Actually, I heard that you were going to accompany your father to the peace talks. The Minister of War in Dezhou isn't a good person. If you don't want to go, I can help you. Speaking of the peace talks, Qin Yining's expression didn't change, but Pang Shao immediately sensed that her mood was a bit down. Perhaps it was because she was facing an outsider and her actions wouldn't affect the other party's mood or life or death, but Qin Yining couldn't help but remove her mask of calmness. You'll help me. How can you help me? Ask the emperor to change his mind. Or ask Dezhou to change the official in charge of the peace talks. Young Master Yao, I know that your background isn't ordinary, but neither of these are things that you and I can control. In my position, I can't run away or hide. I can only accept my fate. Pang Shao raised his eyebrows. If you really go, you'll have to call that official Lian Good in the future. From what I know, official Lian's personality isn't like mine. He won't take advantage of you verbally. Chapter 105. Pang Shao leaned forward, one hand on the edge of the arhat bed, the other pointing to the corner of his mouth. His eyes were wide open and his thin lips were slightly pouted as he looked at her with a smile. You said I have a broken mouth. How is my mouth broken? Why don't I feel it? Qin Yining was almost dazzled by his handsome face that suddenly came close to her. She blushed and stepped back to hide. You are so boring. I said your mouth is too bad and you always bully people. I didn't say your mouth is really broken. Is that so? Pang Xiao had already gotten off the bed. Looking at her blushing cheeks, he couldn't help but bend over with his hands behind his back. He leaned closer to her and said slowly, "Then I misunderstood." Qin Yining looked up and met his dark and deep eyes. His eyes were very beautiful, his nose was tall and straight, and his lips were thin and the corners of his mouth were upturned. At this time, his mouth was closed seriously, but she still felt that he seemed to be smiling. Qin Yining suddenly realized that she was staring at Yao Zhishi's face. She hurriedly lowered her eyes, and her gaze fell on his Adam's apple, which was half exposed outside his snow-white collar. It seemed that something was wrong here. Qin Yining simply turned her head to look elsewhere. Pang Xiao laughed and pretended not to care as he paced in front of her with his hands behind his back. Although he didn't look at her, his attention was on her. TSK, I didn't expect you to be such a woman who knows how to accept her fate. It's different from what I thought. I thought you would run away directly. At this juncture, if I ran away, what would happen to my family? They don't treat you well, and they didn't raise you. You have to sacrifice yourself for them. Are you willing? They may not be sincere to me, and they didn't raise me in the past. But what have I done for them? I'm not a gold ingot. Do you think everyone will like me when they see me? Pang Xiao was stunned when he heard this, and then he laughed. That's not necessarily true. What? Qin Yining looked at him in confusion. I liked you when I saw you. Qin Yining's mind went blank. His cheeks instantly flushed red, and the corners of his lips quivered. He didn't know how to respond. Pang Xiao was also surprised that he had said something like that. He coughed and tried to salvage the situation. It's your fault for looking so much like our big white. Dubai? Qin Yining asked in a daze. Pang Xiao smiled. My mother has a pug with snow-white fur. It's silly and greedy. My mother named it White. There's also a wolfhound named Dahe. They're a pair. You. Qin Yining glared angrily at the person in front of him. The awkwardness and shyness he felt earlier had disappeared, and he couldn't tell what he was feeling now. He always liked to tease her. His identity was unclear, and his words were half-truths. Qin Yining couldn't tell which words were true and which were false. He only knew that he always made her so angry that her teeth itched when she saw him. She wanted to just ignore him, but he wasn't really that annoying. If she paid attention to him, he would always take advantage of her. She really didn't know what to do with him. However, when she thought about the upcoming trip to the peace talks, and the fact that she didn't know if she would be able to come back alive, Qin Yining didn't want to sort out the tangled emotions in his heart. He didn't care anymore. If it weren't for the fact that you saved my life, I would definitely beat you up. Qin Yining snorted in frustration. Pang Xiao smiled and said, You want to beat me up? Or give me a massage? Young Master Yao, I really don't want to joke with you. In fact, even if you didn't send me a letter, I would still come to see you. I don't know if I'll survive this trip. Perhaps this will be our farewell forever. I still haven't repaid you for saving my life, and I feel very guilty. Qin Yining stood up and called Bing Tang over. Bing Tang said that the poison in your body will be cured in 3 or 4 days. I can rest assured. I have already told Master Zhong that if anything happens in the future, if I'm not here, you can come to Master Zhong. Although Zhao Yun Agency isn't a big business, and you may not care about it, you still have some connections. Although this can't be considered repaying you, it is the only thing I can arrange for now. Qin Yining finished speaking and called Bing Tang. Go and give young Master Yao acupuncture. Pang Xiao frowned as he looked at her back. Her satin black hair and snow-white dress made him feel like she was a person in an ink painting that could float away at any time. She was considered tall among women, but she only reached his shoulders. Such a delicate little girl was forced to bear so much helplessness. From childhood to adulthood, she had no control over anything. How similar was her fate to his. Qin Si, Peng Xiao called out to stop her as if he was possessed. Qin Yining turned around. What is it? It's nothing. Don't worry. Qin Yining blinked in confusion. He didn't understand what Peng Xiao meant by don't worry, but he still smiled and said, I'll go talk to Master Zhong and have Bing Tang stay to treat you. Young Master Yao, let's part here. Peng Xiao raised his eyebrows and smiled. He waved his hand and said, It's fine. You can go. He turned around and took off his cloak. Qin Yining didn't stay any longer and went to talk to Master Zhong. The news that Qin Yining was going to follow Qin Huaiyuan to participate in the peace talks had already spread throughout the world. Many people were cursing the incapable ruler behind his back. When Master Zhong heard the news, he was so upset that he couldn't sleep that night. Now that he saw Qin Yining, Master Zhong almost cried in front of him. He repeatedly cursed, how muddle-headed, muddle-headed. Master is such a good person. Why did he have to be involved in such a thing? The most important thing for a girl is her reputation. If he really went to Xihua City. Realizing that his words would cause Qin Yining to panic, Master Zhong wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes. What a sin. Qin Yining could feel Master Zhong's concern for him. He smiled and personally poured a cup of tea for him. I've always thought that I was lucky. When I was young, I was abandoned in the wilderness and should have been eaten by wild wolves long ago. Instead, I was picked up by my foster mother. When I was 7 years old, my foster mother was critically ill. I had originally decided to sell myself in exchange for money to treat her illness. However, I met a kind person who gave me a sum of money. When I was 8 years old, my foster mother died of illness. I went deep into the mountains by myself. I thought that one day I would die. Who would have thought that I would be lucky enough to survive? Later, I thought that I would most likely have to hunt for the rest of my life. However, my father's men found me. At this point, Qin Yining looked at Master Zhong with a smile and comforted him. It can be seen that in a person's life, if you don't take the last step, you will never be able to determine whether what is in front of you is good luck or bad luck. Master Zhong was infected by Qin Yining's optimistic attitude. His heart was suddenly filled with pride. Master's young miss is really broad-minded. This old man has lived for so many years, but I can't compare to young Mississippi. Master Zhong really knows how to joke. In fact, to tell you the truth, I'm really scared to death. However, when it comes to the end, what's the use of being scared? Just like how we all know that we will die when we are born. Don't we want to live? Even if we are scared, we still have to live. When the boat comes to the bridge, it will cross the bridge. We can only resign ourselves to fate. Master Zhong heard this and couldn't help but smile. Isn't that true? Qin Yining explained a bit to Master Zhong. In the end, he said in a low voice, I'm afraid that I won't have much luck. If I don't come back, the Emperor may take back Xiao Yun Agency for his own use. Previously, when the Emperor didn't seize Dinghua Manor, he was already thinking about Xiao Yun Agency's property. If something happens to me, the Emperor will be justified in taking back this place. Master Zhong is the old shopkeeper of Xiao Yun Agency. The Emperor won't treat you unfairly. However, I'm worried about my grandmother and the others. When Qin Yining was here, she could use the convenience of her identity to rent out the womenfolk of Dinghua Manor and raise them with money. However, once she was gone, the Emperor would become the owner of Xiao Yun Agency. He wouldn't raise people to eat for free. Master Zhong sighed and said, Master, my words carry little weight. I can't guarantee anything. However, I can promise you that within the scope of my ability, I will definitely help Old Master's madam. When Old Master was here, he treated me well. You also saved my family's life. I haven't repaid this kindness yet. If something really happens to you, you can rest assured that I will do my best to take care of them. If it really doesn't work, I will give them a sum of money to let them escape. Qin Yining nodded and said gratefully, Thank you very much. When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. Now that she was about to fall, even her own cousins and grandmother wanted to step on her a few times. However, Master Zhong didn't hit her when she was down. He even promised to help the widow of Dinghua Manor. Qin Yining was very touched. While she was talking to Master Zhong, the Bingtang acupuncture treatment for Pang Xiao was already done. Qin Yining took the maidservants back to Qin Manor. For the next few days, Qin Yining didn't go out. He only stayed in Xingning Garden to serve the Sun Clan. The Sun Clan suffered a series of blows. First, they learned that the daughter they raised for 14 years was a fake. Then, Sun Yuanming died and all the men of Dinghua Manor were executed. Then, Qin Huaiyuan took Madame Chao as his concubine. The huge difference in everyone's attitude towards her became the straw that broke her back. Now, Qin Yining was going to be offered to an old sex fiend. He might not even be able to come back alive. The relationship between the Sun Clan and Qin Yining was just getting better. How could she bear to see her daughter jump into the fire pit? Under the combined attacks of several factors, Madame Sun fell ill. Qin Yining was busy taking care of the sick every day. He didn't care about anything else. In the blink of an eye, 8 days passed. On the 15th day of the first lunar month, Nanny Zhan and Qin Yining said goodbye and returned to the palace. Before leaving, Qin Yining sincerely bowed and thanked Nanny Zhan. In this short month, Qin Yining learned a lot from Nanny Zhan and benefited a lot. Nanny Zhan looked at Qin Yining's beautiful face and only thought of the 4 words, beautiful women are short-lived. Unfortunately, she was just a maidservant. She was like duckweed and really couldn't help Qin Yining. She could only helplessly say goodbye. During the Lantern Festival, the warm room banquet was held. The atmosphere of the family Qin was a bit depressing. Old Madam picked up the wine cup and sighed, the peace negotiation team will set off tomorrow. Has Sister Yi's luggage been properly packed? Qin Yining nodded, yes, everything has been properly packed. That's good. As soon as Old Madam finished speaking, Mammy Qin walked in with an extremely unsightly expression, Old Madam, Masters. On the other side of the large mahogany carved screen, Qin Huaiyuan and the other men put down their silver chopsticks and looked at Mammy Qin at the door. Chapter 106. Everyone present knew what Nanny Yanqi did. Qin Yining was an unmarried young lady. Even if Qin Huaiyuan was going to take her to the old sex fiend in Dezhou, she couldn't brazenly call a nanny to teach her how to serve a man. She wasn't going to get married, and she wasn't one of those prostitutes in brothels who wanted to sell their bodies. The Empress was humiliating the family Qin and slapping the family Qin's face in public. Qin Yining pursed her lips. She knew that the Demon Empress was going to make trouble before she left. Everyone present didn't have a good expression. The Sun Clan had been sick for the past few days and was very weak. Today, they barely managed to get up to attend the Lantern Festival banquet. Who would have thought that they would receive such news? They were so angry that their heads buzzed and their vision turned black. If it weren't for Mother Jin's sharp eyes, the Sun Clan would have fallen down. The 3rd young lady, 7th young lady, and 8th young lady looked at Qin Yining with helplessness and pity in their eyes. Only the 6th young lady rolled her eyes at Qin Yining and secretly scolded her for asking for it. She was reprimanded by her father and grounded by her mother to copy the 4 self-accomplishment classics for women. It was only this morning that her confinement was lifted. Qin Huaining used a handkerchief to wipe the corners of her eyes and said worriedly, "She's already like this before she leaves. What will happen when she leaves? Will Sister E come back alive?" Everyone thought so, but only Qin Huaining said those words to block Qin Yining's heart. Old Madam, Second Madam, and Third Madam all felt that Qin Huaining was too impersonal to speak like this in such an occasion. However, because Chao Yuqing was also present, they didn't dare to offend her and didn't say anything to stop her. The Sun clan was so angry that they coughed again and glared at Qin Huaining with ashen faces. They didn't expect that after raising her for 14 years, she would raise an enemy. Qin Huaining smugly looked at the quiet Qin Yining and the miserable Sun clan. Unexpectedly, Chao Yuqing frowned and reprimanded her. "Qin Huaining, are you talking like a human? Shut up." Qin Huaining's eyes widened in shock. He didn't come back to his senses for a long time. She didn't understand why Chao Yuqing kept speaking up for Qin Yining. Why did everyone in this family like to Qin Yining? Why did everyone target her? The fight between the womenfolk only lasted for a moment. On the other side of the screen, Qin Huaiyuan and Qin Xiuyuan all looked solemn. Among the younger generation, First Master Qin Yu and Second Master Qin Han were somewhat unable to remain calm. Qin Han had a chivalrous heart and loved to fight for justice. Now, he slammed the table and stood up, saying anxiously, "Uncle, we can't let others bully Fourth Sister like this." Fourth Sister's participation in the peace talks was an imperial order that could not be disobeyed. For the sake of the country, what was the meaning of sending such a person? What does she think our family's legitimate daughter is? If we let that nanny Yanxi in like this, won't people look down on our family? Qin Han's words also reminded the womenfolk on the other side of the screen. Second Madam and Third Madam's faces gradually became solemn. Their hands unconsciously grasped their lapels tightly, wrinkling their lapels. If they really let Nanny Yanxi in, they were afraid that all kinds of rumors would spread. Where would the dignity of family Qin's daughters go? Not to mention other things, their second and third branches still had unmarried daughters. Second Madam and Third Madam both looked at the Sun clan for help. However, the Sun clan only cared about being angry and didn't look at them. Presumably, she didn't have extra brain power to think about this. The two looked at Old Madam, but Old Madam just lowered her head and drank tea. She didn't look at them or anyone else. The two knew that Old Madam had thought of everything, but she refused to say anything. She was afraid of offending the Demon Empress's sister. The two mothers were so angry that their faces turned red, but their hearts were cold. What kind of mother-in-law did they have? Second Madam hesitated and was about to speak, but unexpectedly, Qin Yining said first, "Father, you have to think twice about this. Your daughter is destined to be abandoned, but there are other sisters in the family. They still have to be human." His words made Second Madam and Third Madam look at Qin Yining gratefully. The girls now also realized the seriousness of the matter, and they nervously frowned. Some of them lowered their heads in silence, and their emotions couldn't be seen clearly. Some looked at Qin Yining gratefully, and some, like Qin Huaining and Sixth Miss, angrily glared at Qin Yining, resenting her for implicating them. Qin Huaiyuan slowly stood up, walked to the door with his hands behind his back, and ordered Mammy Qin, "Call someone here." "Yes." Mammy Qin answered and retreated. Not long after, a 35-year-old woman wearing a red dress with floral patterns walked in quickly. She had makeup on her face and wore a big red silk flower on her head. She was dressed very jubilantly. Seeing Qin Huaiyuan, Mama Yanxi bowed and said with a smile, "Greetings, Grand Preceptor Qin." This servant greets Grand Preceptor Qin and all the masters. Qin Huaiyuan nodded slightly and said, "What's your surname, Mama?" I don't dare, I don't dare. This servant's surname is Jiang. Yes, Mama Jiang. Qin Huayuan smiled and asked gently, did you come here today because of the Empress's order or the Emperor's order? Mama Jiang quickly looked up at Qin Huayuan. She wanted to say something with a smile, but although Qin Huayuan's smile was gentle, his eyes were too cold. Mama Jiang's smile almost froze, and she hurriedly bowed again respectfully. Grand Preceptor, this is the Empress's verbal order. Qin Huayuan nodded and said, servants, prepare a carriage and send Mama Jiang back to the palace. Mama Jiang widened her eyes in astonishment. Old Madam, who had been silent, suddenly stood up and rushed out of the screen. She grabbed Qin Huayuan's sleeve and said, Brother Meng, you can't. Seeing Old Madam like this, Second Madam and Third Madam almost wanted to learn from the Sun Clan and scold this extremely selfish and wicked woman. Even Second Master and Third Master knitted their brows and pursed their lips. Qin Huayuan didn't get angry because he knew Old Madam's temperament too well. He only comforted her and said, Mother, don't worry. Your son has his own ideas. I'll tell you later. Old Madam looked at Qin Huayuan hesitantly. After a long time, she slowly nodded. Qin Huayuan instructed Mammy Qin, wrap a big red envelope and give it to Mama Jiang. He turned to Mama Jiang and said with a gentle smile, Mama Jiang, please go back to the palace and give a message to the Empress for this official. Yes. This servant will definitely do it. Grand Preceptor, please say it. I will remember the Empress's good intentions. In the future, if the Qin Manor marries a daughter, I will definitely ask Mama Yanxi to come and serve. This was a warning to the Empress. Family Qin wasn't marrying a daughter. There was no need for her to pretend to be kind. Mama Jiang's face turned pale. She hesitated and said, but the Empress's verbal order. If the Empress insists, then please ask the Emperor to issue an imperial edict. When I see the imperial edict, I will definitely do it. The implication was that if they didn't disobey the imperial edict, they would be loyal and patriotic. The dignified Grand Preceptor Qin's manner wouldn't put a harem girl like you in their eyes. Such a tough attitude showed that they were angry and wanted to go against the Empress. Some of the family Qin people were secretly happy. Some were worried and almost fainted like Old Madam. However, Chao Yuqing stood up and said to Mama Jiang, go back and tell Chao Yuro not to meddle in our family's affairs. Just take care of her own stall. Mama Jiang's cold sweat flowed down. Chapter 107. Nanny Jiang could only respond on the surface, but the cold sweat on her back had soaked her undergarments. She couldn't not reply, but she didn't dare to repeat Qin Huayuan's words to the Empress. She still wanted to live. Qin Huayuan pursed his lips and stood in place with his hands behind his back. He didn't want to care about whether Nanny Jiang was embarrassed or not. These people were used to bullying the weak and fearing the strong. Today, they were facing a tough person. If they were facing a soft person, these wicked servants would be more black-hearted than ordinary people. There was no reason that he couldn't get angry when being bullied. Chao Yuqing looked at Qin Huayuan softly and said, Lei, let this concubine follow this nanny into the palace. I will explain to the Empress. After all, it's more convenient for sisters to talk. We are all in-laws. It's not good to cause misunderstandings. Good, good. Yuqing, we have to trouble you with today's matter. Old Madam let out a long sigh and patted Chao Yuqing's hand intimately. Old Madam, what are you talking about? Since this concubine entered the family Qin, this concubine is a member of the family Qin. How can this concubine look at our family's joke? Chao Yuqing looked at Qin Huayuan with a smile. Lei, what do you think? Qin Huayuan looked at Chao Yuqing and pondered for a moment. He nodded and cupped his hands. Then, I'll have to trouble you. Seeing him so polite, Chao Yuqing's eyes dimmed for a moment. She immediately returned the greeting. Laoi is too polite. This concubine will go now. If it's late today, this concubine will stay with the Empress and come back tomorrow. Laoi and old madam can rest assured. After saying that, Chao Yuqing called Nanny Jiang and went out with her personal maidservant. Old madam put her palms together and bowed to the sky. Amitabha. Fortunately, we have such a virtuous person in our family. She's not like the kind of person who only knows how to cause trouble and only knows how to cause trouble. She's not helpful to the family at all. Obviously, she was talking about the Sun clan. Qin Huayuan frowned and said, Mother, it's getting late. We have to leave tomorrow. I'll go back and make some preparations. Without waiting for old madam's reply, he turned around the screen and walked towards the Sun clan. He said softly, let's go back. The Sun clan's members' tears slid down at once. The anger of being scolded indirectly by old madam just now had disappeared. He nodded and gave an N. After the two of them walked far away, old madam came back to her senses and said awkwardly, let's disperse for today. Tell them to go back and prepare. With the sudden change in mood, everyone lost interest in continuing. They all bowed and retreated. Qin Yining returned to the master's study and went to bed after washing up as usual. The next morning, the accompanying officials from the Ministry of Rites were already waiting outside the Fu. Qin Yining followed Qin Huayuan to bid farewell to the family. After listening to old madam's exhortations such as, you must be sensible and obedient, she took Bing Tang and Song Lan and boarded the 8-treasure tasseled carriage that was specially prepared for her. Opening the window, Qin Yining lifted the water-blue tasseled curtain with her white hand. She took off her hood and looked up at the main entrance of Qin Fu. Under the gloomy winter sun, the golden words, Qin Fu, on the signboard were so dazzling that she couldn't help but squint her eyes. The white walls and black tiles extended in 2 directions, encircling the huge family Qin. The womenfolk dressed in red and green, surrounded by pearls and jade, stood in front of the door. Regardless of whether they were sincere or not, everyone's eyelashes were filled with tears as they looked at her reluctantly. The Sun clan's member leaned on Mother Jin's shoulder and cried his heart out. This family might not be warm. However, the existence of this residence gave her a place to return to. She just didn't expect that the affairs of the world were unpredictable. She had just found a true home and now she had to leave again. She didn't even know if she could return. Qin Huayuan's splendid red carriage was in front of Qin Yining's carriage. At this time, he was also leaning against the window and looking out. The accompanying officials from the Ministry of Rites saw that the auspicious hour was approaching and urged their horses forward, cupping their hands and saying, Darren, the time has come. Qin Huayuan nodded and said, then let's set out. As he spoke, he let down the curtain. Hearing this, Qin Yining smiled at the Sun clan and Qiu Lu and the others beside the Sun clan. She also let down the curtain and closed the window. Before she left, she had entrusted the servants of the master's study to Mother Jin to take care of. At this point, the people related to her had already been arranged. Even if she couldn't return, she wouldn't be worried. Actually, she didn't want to bring along Bing Tang and Song Lan. It was the two of them who insisted on following. Song Lan shouted that she wanted to throw herself into the Demon Empress, while Bing Tang prepared poison and wanted to perish together with the Demon Empress. Qin Yining talked until her mouth was dry, but she still wouldn't listen to them. Thus, she could only bring them along. The carriage swayed as the procession slowly moved forward. The Sun clan's member pulled on Mother Jin's hand and chased after them. Choking with sobs, she said loudly, Sister Yi, you must come back. I'll wait for you to come back. Qin Yining's suppressed sorrow of separation was aroused by her mother's words. She forcefully closed her eyes and raised her head. Only then did she hold back the tears that were about to flow out. The Sun Clan's member watched as the procession gradually moved further away and sobbed silently. That child has only been back for 2 months. I haven't even treated her well. A friend in need was a friend indeed. Today, the Sun Clan no longer doubted Qin Yining and could truly see who in this residence truly treated her well. Qin Yining was truly filial and wholeheartedly wanted what was best for her. However, when she had the ability to take care of her, she didn't treat her well. The Sun Clan now regretted that they had done so. Mother Jean, 3rd young miss, and 8th young miss were all consoling her. 4th young miss will definitely return safely. Madam, don't worry. That's right, eldest aunt. 4th sister is brave and resourceful. She will definitely return safely. The Dowager Duchess's heart also didn't feel good. In the end, she was still a beautiful girl. Moreover, her appearance and temperament were similar to her most beloved son. However, the situation was like this. They had no choice but to accept their fate. Let's go back. The Dowager Duchess sighed. Unexpectedly, just as she finished speaking, she heard the sound of hurried horse hooves approaching from afar. Everyone turned their heads to look and saw the Crown Prince, wearing a light purple cloak with a white fox fur collar, quickly approaching. Behind him, a group of eunuchs wearing iron-gray cotton clothes hastily urged their horses to chase after him. Yu Yen didn't dismount and anxiously asked, "Where is 4th young miss? Has she already left?" He didn't ask Qin Huayuan, the Grand Tutor, but instead asked Qin Yining. How could anyone not understand the Crown Prince's thoughts? If it wasn't for the Emperor's edict this time, their family might have a Crown Prince consort. In the future, they might even have an Empress. When the Dowager Duchess thought of this, it was as if someone had gouged out a knife in her heart. She wrung her hands and shook her head. Gone, already gone. Gone. Yu Yan's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that Qin Yining wasn't willing to be humiliated and committed suicide? Seeing the Crown Prince's face instantly turn pale, the second madam on the side hurriedly said, "Your Highness, 4th young miss just set off with Grand Tutor Qin. If you quickly catch up now, you will definitely be able to make it." Only then did Yu Yen seem to come back to life. Color gradually returned to his face. He nodded to the second madam, the Dowager Duchess, and the others, then spurred his horse to catch up. Your Highness, Your Highness. I-oh. The eunuchs also hurriedly chased after the Crown Prince. The traveling group chose the main road that was sparsely populated, but Yu Yen panicked and didn't choose the right path. He chased along the market and naturally didn't find them. When he reached the North City Gate, he discovered that the carriage hadn't arrived yet. Yu Yen wanted to turn back. It was the accompanying eunuch who advised him, "If Your Highness goes back, what if you get lost again? It's better for Your Highness to wait on the road outside the city." Yu Yen slapped her forehead and let out a long sigh. This queen was panicking. He calmed his mind and chose a forest 20 li outside the city to wait. In the forest, Peng Xiao and Huzi were perched on a thick tree and eating steamed buns. When they heard footsteps coming from outside, the two slowly stopped eating. Huzi whispered, "Master, it seems that someone is coming." Peng Xiao stuffed the last bite of the steamed bun into his mouth and his cheeks puffed up. Huzi also ate the steamed bun and stood up to look in the direction of the official road. He whispered, "It seems that he is coming to see you off." Looking at his clothes and the people accompanying him, this person should be the Dian Crown Prince. Peng Xiao leisurely wrapped the fine cotton cloak tightly around his body. He was too lazy to speak. Huzi secretly rolled his eyes. When he saw Miss Qin, he became a ruffian and chatterbox. He didn't even bother to say a word to him. The difference in treatment was too obvious. Huzi sat down beside Pang Shao and whispered, "Master, should we take the opportunity to kill him?" Pang Shao raised his eyebrows. "You are one of the Dian Emperor's men." Huzi was stunned and shook his head blankly. "No." "Then why are you still helping that bastard?" Although the Yan Emperor only had one heir, Yu Qiyan, he was also suspicious and guarded against his own son. He was old, but he refused to admit his old age. He had been occupying the position and hoped that his eldest son would die so that he would have one less threat. "Keep him." Pang Shao lazily closed his eyes. Huzi whispered, "But we don't have to wait here." With the speed of their carriage, no matter how slow they are, they will arrive at Xihua City in 2 days. What problem can there be in 2 days? Pang Shao closed his eyes as if he didn't hear him. Huzi knew that he was ignored again, so he could only squat on the branch and play with the bark. Not long after, the sound of carriages and horses came from the official road. Pang Shao suddenly opened his eyes. He maintained his posture of leaning against the tree trunk as he listened attentively to the movements outside. Yu Qiyan saw the carriages coming and hurriedly rode his horse to meet them. "Ride!" Seeing that it was the Crown Prince, the accompanying 100 soldiers and 50 guards all dismounted and saluted. Someone quickly ran to the carriage and said, "Master, His Highness the Crown Prince is here." Yu Qiyan shook the reins and rode to Qin Huayuan's carriage. He first saluted and said, "Grand Tutor Qin." "His Highness the Crown Prince." Qin Huayuan jumped off the carriage and smiled to return the salute. He wanted to say something polite, but the Crown Prince interrupted him first. "Grand Tutor Qin, I have something to say to 4th Miss Qin. I hope you will allow me to delay the carriages for a while." Qin Huayuan was stunned and then looked at the carriage behind him. The door of the carriage was pushed open, and Qin Yining, who was wearing a white rabbit fur cloak, looked over in surprise. Yu Qiyan's eyes met with Qin Yining's, and his heartbeat suddenly went out of control. He jumped off the horse and couldn't help but walk quickly to her. "4th Miss, fortunately, I caught up with you. Don't worry, no matter what happens, as long as you come back, I will immediately ask for an imperial edict from my father. I swear, only you can be the crown princess." Qin Yining stared at Yu Qiyan in shock. Yu Qiyan looked at Qin Yining with burning eyes. The surroundings were silent, and everyone was stunned. In the forest, Pang Shao, who was squatting on a tree, snorted with a gloomy face. Huzi was so scared that he hurriedly moved out and almost fell off the tree. Chapter 108. Qin Yining blinked her beautiful eyes. It took her a long time to digest the meaning of Yu Qiyan's words. She was a little moved. But more than that, she was surprised and pondered. She wasn't familiar with Yu Qiyan. His words made people think that they had already pledged their undying love to each other. If he really had such words, why did he say it in front of so many people? If he was afraid that she wouldn't be humiliated and would commit suicide, why didn't he tell her secretly and give her a chance to live? Now, the officials from the Ministry of Rights, the 100 soldiers and 50 guards arranged by the emperor were all watching. There must be spies from different factions among them. Yu Qiyan wanted to tie her to his ship in front of everyone and pull Qin Huayuan to his side. He didn't care about her reputation at all. He wanted everyone to misunderstand that she and the Crown Prince had secretly agreed to marry each other. Qin Yining had to admit that she was too realistic. But she was the legitimate daughter of the Grand Preceptor. She couldn't be like an ordinary girl who only talked about love and not analyzed the situation of the court. If Yu Qian was just a young master from an ordinary family, she would think that he was showing his true feelings. But Yu Qian was the crown prince. The crown prince's position was in danger. The crown prince had a close relationship with Ning Wang. When Ning Wang stole the Bing Tang, she went to rescue him and fell into his trap. She was forced to pull Ding General Manor and her father into Ning Wang's camp. That was why Ning Wang was able to successfully impeach Chao Guozhang and offend the Chao family. That was why the Demon Empress set him up, causing Sun Yuanming's death and the Sun family's destruction. So many women had no one to rely on and indirectly caused her mother's difficulties in Qin Manor. This chain reaction was caused by Ning Wang and the Crown Prince's plan. At that time, she naively thought that she was saving people. But the cruel reality taught her a lesson. The Sun family's blood was expensive. With all these experiences, Qin Yining was no longer a young girl who was filled with longing for love. She smiled and supported the hands of Bing Tang and Song Lan as she slowly got off the carriage. She took 2 steps back and bowed. She said crisply, "Your Highness, please conduct yourself with dignity." Since ancient times, marriage has always been decided by the parents and matchmakers. Your Highness' conduct is not in accordance with etiquette. Yu Qian was stunned when he heard this. His fair face immediately flushed red. He took 2 quick steps towards Qin Yining and reached out to hold her hand. "Fourth young lady, you've misunderstood. Pa." His hand grabbed hers, but was immediately swatted away by her other hand, leaving a patch of red on the back of his hand. Qin Yining frowned and said coldly, "Your Highness, men and women should not touch each other." Although this subject's daughter was ordered to participate in the peace talks, and the outside world made all kinds of rumors about this subject's daughter was willing to sacrifice herself for the country. Today, Your Highness actually took advantage of this subject's daughter in front of so many people. This subject's daughter's reputation is not in your eyes. Yu Qian looked down at his hand in a daze. He then looked at the 100 or so people around them. He then looked at Qin Huayuan, who was frowning. A few simple brain circuits were finally connected. He thought about how Prince Ning persuaded his imperial father to release him from confinement last night. He thought about how Prince Ning urged him to quickly chase after her this morning. Some vague ideas gradually formed in his mind. He felt that he was being used, but he still didn't understand the specific details. He only knew that his confession didn't get Qin Yining's eyes filled with tears. He didn't get her to be moved and give her body to him. Instead, he had taken advantage of her in front of so many people and looked down on her. That's right. She wasn't a brothel girl. She was a proper lady from a noble family. Even if there were only 2 people talking about the matters between a man and a woman, it would still be private. Moreover, he had actually announced it in front of so many people and even wanted to grab her hand. Yu Qian was filled with regret. His face had already turned purple. Tian Han, the crown prince, is busy with official business. Please go back. Qin Yining said as he curtsied and got back into the carriage. The crown prince was stunned in place as he stared blankly at his beautiful back. Qin Huayuan watched everything from the side and naturally understood Qin Yining's considerations. He had a deeper understanding of his daughter's intelligence. In the past, when she schemed with people in the Fu, he could only see her intelligence and methods. Now, her actions truly showed her political acumen and her ability to see the big picture. She had rejected him so harshly not only to protect her reputation, but also to let people know that he, Qin Huayuan, was loyal to the emperor. Even if he became the crown prince's imperial tutor, he hadn't become someone else's weapon. Moreover, she was a lady of the boudoir. When faced with such a public molestation, her rebuke was righteous and justified. She also said that marriage was a matter of respect to one's parents. She also left some leeway for the marriage between the family Qin and the Crown Prince. Your Highness the Crown Prince, the auspicious hour cannot be delayed. This official will take his leave first. Qin Huaiyuan smiled and bowed to the Crown Prince. His attitude was no different from his usual humble and courteous manner. No one could tell what he was thinking. Yu Qiyan was so anxious that sweat appeared on his forehead. Imperial tutor, Your Highness the Crown Prince doesn't need to say any more. This official understands. What do you understand? I'm just afraid that you understand wrongly. Yu Qiyan screamed in his heart. His lips moved, but he didn't know what to say. Pang Shao, who was sitting on a tree in the forest, once again relaxed and leaned against the tree trunk. He closed his eyes and rested. Qin Huaiyuan and Yu Qiyan went through the formalities, then got into the carriage and gave the order to set off. The carriages moved slowly. Yu Qiyan stood on the side of the road with the eunuchs. After a long time, he came back to his senses and got on the horse in a daze. He was no longer in high spirits. The eunuch who was following him looked at the Crown Prince's face and tried to figure out, Your Highness, the young lady from the family Qin doesn't know how to appreciate favors. Your Highness the Crown Prince is such a romantic and elegant person. You are willing to marry a withered woman like her. How dare she be so arrogant? Your Highness, how about? Go away. Yu Qiyan lashed out with his whip and said angrily, Go to Prince Ning's mansion. The eunuch was shocked to realize that he had hit the horse's leg. He didn't dare to say anything more and hurriedly saluted. The group of people followed the Crown Prince to the city. The official road gradually returned to silence. Pang Shao opened his eyes, and landed on the ground with a light leap. Huzi followed closely behind. Master, that Crown Prince really likes the fourth miss of the Qin family. He likes her. But his actions are too disorderly. Pang Shao walked to the depths of the forest in the direction where they tied the horses. Huzi was surprised that Pang Shao had answered him. He hurriedly asked, Master, although Crown Prince didn't consider the fourth miss's reputation and it's not good to do that in public, he also showed his true feelings. The person behind the scenes used his true feelings. He was betrayed and still sold for money. It's not bad to keep this kind of Crown Prince. Master, I don't understand. Didn't he say in the end that he was going to find Prince Ning? Pang Shao had already walked to the horse and untied the reins. Crown Prince's confinement was only lifted last night. He stayed in the Eastern Palace for the whole new year to reflect on his mistakes. He was lifted yesterday and hurried here early this morning. After doing something stupid, he went back to find Prince Ning. Don't you understand? Huzi blinked his eyes and let out a long, oh. It's Prince Ning behind the scenes again. He wants to win over Qin Meng completely. Oh, last time he tried to win over Qin Meng, all the men of the Sun family were killed. This time, fortunately, the fourth miss knew how to respect herself and avoided this disaster. Pang Shao stroked his beloved horse with shiny black fur and said, She's a smart one. It was a waste of his sweat for her just now. Huzi was surprised and said, Master, do you mean that the fourth miss did it on purpose? Let's go. Hey, Master, you haven't answered me yet. Pang Shao didn't say anything. Huzi sullenly pursed his lips and followed Pang Shao to lead the horse to the official road. He muttered, It's just the two of us. Even if the Tayton people come, what can we do? Besides, there are more than 150 men in the peace negotiation team. At most, 20 or 30 Tayton people will come. They won't be able to destroy the peace negotiation team. Pang Shao raised his eyebrows and looked at Huzi. Then he pulled out a black leather rope from his collar. A small red jade whistle carved with a tiger's head was tied to the rope. Huzi was surprised and said, You called for Jinghu Wei. Pang Shao answered with the whistle. A bleak, high-pitched eagle's cry spread through the sky. Not long after, 10 strong men rode their horses from the direction of the capital. They were all in their early 20s and were all tall and strong. Their chi acupoints were bulging, and one could tell at a glance that their skills were not ordinary. Seeing Pang Shao sitting gracefully on the black horse, the 10 men dismounted and knelt on one knee. They saluted in unison, "Master." "Well, get up. It's been a long journey. Follow me. It's our honor to be loyal to our master. It's not hard at all." The 10 men mounted their horses again and followed behind Pang Shao. Huzi clicked his tongue. The Jinghu Wei were carefully trained by Pang Shao. They were all people who had no home to return to during the war. On the surface, they were counted as soldiers of the Prince Zhongshuan's government. There were only 100 of them. However, these 100 people were the cream of the crop from the thousands of people who had gathered here. Those who were not selected were all incorporated into the Tiger Army. It could be said that most of the men in the Tiger Army who worshipped Wang Yi were trained by Wang Yi. Everyone wanted to be like the Jinghu Wei and serve Wang Yi closely. Before Wang Yi left for the war, he left 40 Jinghu Wei behind to protect the prince's mansion. 20 Jinghu Wei were hidden and assigned missions around the capital. He also left 6 disguised as servants and eunuchs to protect the old madam and the others. He only brought 34 people with him. These 34 people all had their own missions. Now that he heard that the Taiten spies had infiltrated Dezhou, Wang Yi sent 10 of them to protect the daughter of his enemy. Huzi didn't know what to say. Pang Shao and Huzi led the 10 Jinghu Wei and followed behind the group of people who were negotiating in Dezhou at a distance. They could prevent the group from discovering them and ensure the safety of the group. Later that evening, the Tatars, who were disguised as mountain bandits, were completely wiped out by Pang Shao and his men without the slightest effort. For Qin Yining, the journey was quite peaceful. For Pang Shao and Huzi, the journey was relaxing and not boring. On the afternoon of the 18th, the group finally arrived at the outskirts of Xihua City. Qin Yining lifted the warm curtains on the window. The fiery red setting sun half covered the mountains. The ancient city of Xihua City stood tall and looked at the swaying mountains and rivers in the Dian with a pitiful gaze. The 2 armies stood in the wilderness. The wind that blew was mixed with the smell of gunpowder and blood. This was a cruel battlefield. Chapter 109. As soon as the Dian peace talk team arrived, they were welcomed into the city by General Wang Hui and Magistrate Liu, who had been waiting for a long time. Seeing that there was a beautiful young lady accompanying him, how could the crowd not understand? The faces of the hot-blooded men who had fought on the battlefield blushed. They were not like the group of cowards who only knew how to talk on paper and were afraid of death in the capital. They had fought on the front line and seen the cruelty of war with their own eyes. They understood the role played by the old, the weak, the women, and the children in the war. They risked their lives to prevent the enemy from harming the women and children in their families. They wanted the people to have food to eat and clothes to wear. They wanted the children to have books to study and grow up safely. Therefore, any hot-blooded man would not want to see rape, and pillage happen in front of their eyes. If they fought to the death, it was because their martial arts were not good enough. They could not care about what happened after they died. However, before they fought to the death, the emperor sent an innocent girl to their door. Wasn't this a slap in the face? The emperor of Dezhou bullied the Dian in every possible way. However, the emperor listened to the evil empress' slanderous words. Not only did he harm the loyal people, but he also ignored the people's wishes. The blood of the loyal soldiers of Ding General Manor was not cold yet. The soldiers were ready to fight with all their strength. However, the emperor was so afraid of death. De Zhou casually said a word of peace talk, and the emperor did not care about the former enmity. He even took the initiative to send Grand Preceptor Qin's daughter to the Dian. Everyone had a lot of resentment in their hearts. They hated the incapable emperor and the evil empress. They felt pain for the Ding General Manor, which had been destroyed. They sympathized with Grand Preceptor Qin, who they had always respected. They also felt pity for Grand Preceptor Qin's daughter. Therefore, General Wang Hui, Magistrate Liu, and the others were very polite to Qin Huaiyuan and Qin Yining. Grand Preceptor Qin, Miss Qin, please settle down in the magistrate's office today. Qin Huaiyuan said, there's no hurry to settle down. I'm afraid that a long delay may lead to unexpected changes. It's better to send a letter to the enemy camp now. It's better to decide the location and time of the peace talk first. Magistrate Liu nodded and said, yes, the Grand Preceptor is right. Qin Huaiyuan turned around and said to Qin Yining, go and have a good rest. If anything happens, I'll send someone to pick you up. Yes, father. Qin Yining bowed to everyone and left. The prefectural magistrate's wife was standing guard outside the door with her maidservants. When she saw Qin Yining come out, she immediately politely led her into the yamen and arranged for her to stay in the best room in the main courtyard. She also ordered the maidservants to prepare good food and hot water for her. That night, Qin Yining tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep. No matter how strong she appeared to be, she was still a girl who had yet to reach marriageable age. When she thought of what she was about to experience, she was so nervous that her whole body turned cold. She had always said that she was open-minded and that nothing was more important than surviving. But now that things had really happened, she suddenly began to doubt whether she could continue to live if she was really humiliated. What was the point of living? She was lost in thought as she looked at the light on the curtain. It was not until the sky turned bright that Qin Yining fell asleep in a daze. It seemed that she had just fallen asleep when a servant's voice came from outside. Grand Preceptor Qin has sent someone to invite Miss Qin. Qin Yining sat up with a start and opened the curtain. What she saw was a pale Song Lan and a red-eyed Bing Tang. I know. Go and tell my father that I'll be there in a moment. Qin Yining's voice was a bit hoarse. Qin Yining rubbed her slightly painful temples and said to Bing Tang and Song Lan, help me dress up. Yes. Song Lan choked with sobs. She took out a beautiful jade-colored robe and a jade-colored brocade cloak with a white fox fur collar and helped Qin Yining change into it. Bing Tang opened the dressing room and helped Qin Yining put on her makeup. Her hair was piled into a jade bun, her eyebrows were lightly swept, her eyes were limpid, and her lips were dainty. Qin Yining looked at herself in the bronze mirror. She was different from her usual bare-faced self. Today, she was much brighter than usual. She tried to smile. She smiled, but Bing Tang and Song Lan beside her were crying. Miss, you, don't cry. I'm not going to die. Qin Yining stood up and stroked her long hair that fell on her shoulders. She smiled and said, you don't have to come with me. Wait for me here. Miss. I'll go with you. Bing Tang sniffed and said, at least I know how to use poison. If that old bastard really wants to harm you, I'll poison him to death. If he dies, the peace talks will fail. The next to die will be the entire Qin residence. Qin Yining smiled bitterly and took out a handkerchief to wipe Bing Tang's tears. Don't be afraid. No matter what happens, I'll come back alive. It's inconvenient for you to come with me. Just wait for me here. Song Lan choked with sobs and knelt down with a plop. She grabbed the corner of Qin Yining's jade-colored cloak and said, Miss, this servant's life was saved by you. If you're not here, this servant will follow you and continue to serve you in the afterlife. Me too. If you're not here, I'll go back and perish with the demon empress. I'll continue to serve you in the afterlife. Bing Tang also knelt down and grabbed Qin Yining's hand. Silly words. Qin Yining pulled the two up and patted Song Lan's shoulder. Then, he pinched Bing Tang's apple face. You're both still young. What's more, if I'm really not here anymore, won't you think of helping me take care of my mother? Miss. Song Lan cried even harder. Qin Yining blinked and forced back the tears that were about to gush out, leaving them with the brightest smile. Okay, I'm leaving. After he finished speaking, he turned around and left without hesitation. Bing Tang and Song Lan chased after him while sobbing. However, they could only stand in the corridor and watch Qin Yining leave with the prefectural magistrate's madam. Qin Huaiyuan didn't sleep for the entire night. At this moment, he was standing in the corridor wearing a sable fur coat. He looked up at the blue sky and was lost in thought. General Wang Hui was already outside making preparations for the trip. Magistrate Liu was standing beside him. Father. A clear call made Qin Huaiyuan come back to his senses. He looked in the direction of the voice and saw Qin Yining, who was elegantly dressed but so beautiful that he couldn't take his eyes off her. Father, are we going now? Qin Yining smiled. Qin Huaiyuan's Adam's apple bobbed up and down. After a long time, he gritted his teeth and nodded. Whether the location of the peace talks is in or outside the city, it's not reassuring. Therefore, after discussion last night, we decided to set up temporary tents between the two armies outside Xihua City. Both sides are allowed to bring 100 soldiers with them. Sister Yi, you'll come with me later. Qin Yining nodded obediently. The pearl tassels on her temples swayed slightly. It's good that we're not in the city. We don't want people from Dezhou to sneak in and harm us. When we go out, we have to close the city gates and leave someone to guard it. You're right. I've already discussed it with Magistrate Liu and General Wang Hui. I'll lead the officials from the Ministry of Rights to preside over the peace talks. General Wang Hui and Magistrate Liu will stay behind to guard the city. That's good. We can rest assured. Not long after, General Wang Hui had already selected 100 men from the army. Qin Huaiyuan and the Minister of Rights, Cui Wenqing, walked in front, while Qin Yining followed behind alone. They left the yamen together. Before leaving the city gates, Qin Huaiyuan led Qin Yining up the city gate tower. General Wang Hui, Magistrate Liu, and the 100 soldiers followed closely behind. Standing on the towering city gate tower, Qin Yining's long hair fluttered in the wind as a gust of wild wind blew past. She looked at the beautiful mountains and rivers under the morning sun. She looked at Dezhou's barracks, which were not far away. She looked at the pale and continuous mountain ranges in the distance. She suddenly felt that the sky was vast and the ground was vast. Qin Huaiyuan stood with his hands behind his back and asked loudly, Sister Yi, are you afraid? What's there to be afraid of? When people come to this world, no one can leave alive. The worst that can happen is death. What's there to be afraid of? Her voice was not loud, but everyone present heard her clearly. The 100 soldiers who were originally selected were all determined to die. Even the Minister of Rights, Cui Wenqing, was so nervous that his back was covered in cold sweat. If the peace talks failed and Dezhou turned hostile, none of them would be able to survive. But now, these men were filled with hot blood. They were suddenly emboldened and filled with lofty sentiments. What was there to be afraid of? Even a little girl like her had such a heart. There was no reason for these men to be afraid of death. General Wang Hui was moved and said, Miss Qin is indeed the daughter of a famous family. I admire you. Don't worry, Grand Preceptor Qin. If the peace talks fail, we will kill these thieves who dare to bully Dian even if we have to risk our lives. Good. With General Wang and Magistrate Lu guarding the city, we have nothing to worry about. Qin Huaiyuan smiled calmly. Then, he said loudly, prepare the carriages and horses. Let's set out. Yes. The men responded loudly. Their voices shook the heavens. Qin Huaiyuan and Cui Wenqing boarded the first carriage. Qin Yining sat alone in the second carriage. They were escorted by 100 soldiers to the temporary camp that had just been set up between the two armies. Because both sides had brought the same number of soldiers and had set up their own tents and the main tent used for peace talks, the camp occupied a large area. As soon as Qin Yining's carriage entered the camp, he saw two groups of people wearing red clothes and black armor and khaki military uniforms had already occupied half of the camp in an orderly manner. The people in red clothes and black armor had a tiger head emblem on their sleeves. Behind these people, there were several flags with a golden tiger on a black background and a flag with the word swastika on a red background fluttering in the wind. The men in Dezhou's khaki military uniforms had the word Lian fluttering behind them. Qin Yining immediately knew that the people in red clothes and black armor were Prince Zhongshuan and Pang Zhao's Tiger Army. The people in khaki military uniforms were ordinary soldiers of Dezhou. They should be under the command of the Minister of War, Lian Xingjie. The carriage slowly came to a stop. Qin Huaiyuan and Cui Wenqing got off the carriage one after the other. Qin Yining stepped on a black wooden stool and slowly got off the carriage. As soon as he raised his head, he saw a group of people walking out of the opposite tent. The leader was a general in his 50s. He had a well-built body, but his eyes were drooping and his face was greasy. He wore golden armor. When this person saw Qin Yining, his eyes widened and he stopped in his tracks. He wished he could dig out his eyeballs and hang them on Qin Yining's body. Such a lecherous person must be the Minister of War, Lian Xingjie, of Dezhou. Qin Yining felt disgusted, but he pretended not to notice. His beautiful eyes turned and landed on an immortal-looking man in his 60s. He was wearing a light gray cotton cloak. His beard fluttered in the wind. Who was this? He looked like a strategist. Chapter 110. Qin Huaiyuan stepped forward and shielded Qin Yining behind him. Then, he looked at the old man staring at him in confusion. He didn't recognize this person, so he didn't understand why the other party was looking at him with such a gaze full of anger and resentment. Jing Pei took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. He smiled kindly and said, "Sir, you must be the famous wise Panin, Grand Preceptor Qin." Qin Huaiyuan cupped his hands in greeting. "That's just some people's false praise. May I ask who this gentleman is?" "This humble one is a strategist under Prince Zhongshuan's command. My surname is Zheng." Upon hearing Prince Zhongshuan's name, Qin Huaiyuan and Qin Yining immediately understood why this person was so hostile. After all, Qin Huaiyuan was the one who tried to drive a wedge between them. Judging from this Sir Zheng's age, he might have once followed Pang Zhongxing. "So it's Sir Zheng. My apologies for not recognizing you." Qin Huaiyuan looked around and said with a smile, "Sir, you must be the Minister of War, Sir Lian, right? Is little Wang Yi also present?" Lian Xingjie had already stretched his neck and looked at Qin Yining several times. When he heard Qin Huaiyuan mention himself, he felt a burst of pride. However, when he was asked about Pang Xiao, he felt unhappy. He immediately said with a sullen expression, "I'm now in charge of the army. I'm here to preside over the peace talks according to the imperial decree. Little Wang Yi is only a general Huban. What difference does it make whether he's here or not?" Qin Huaiyuan raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, "That's true." Zheng Pei had already sized up Qin Yining. In his mind, he was cursing him for being a seductress who could bring disaster to the country and its people. He smiled and asked, "Dare I ask which official of your country this young lady is?" These words made the Dayan's face heat up. Everyone knew that there were no female officials in Dayan. Lian Xingjie's lecherous nature was no secret. The goal of bringing a stunning beauty along with the Dayan peace talks team was very obvious. Zhang Pei's question was akin to trampling on Dayan's dignity. Qin Yining no longer had a good impression of Mr. Zhang. Qin Huayuan was still smiling as he said, "This is my legitimate daughter. I don't have a son, I only have this one bright pearl. In the future, I have the heart to entrust her with important tasks, so I like to bring her along wherever I go, to let her broaden her horizons and broaden her horizons." The Dayan people heaved a sigh of relief. They felt that they had once again regained their dignity and praised Qin Huayuan's wit in their hearts. The people from Dezhou were secretly disdainful. How shameless of him to find such a dignified reason to present a beauty. So it's the daughter of Grand Preceptor Qin. I apologize for my lack of manners. Zhang Pei was still smiling, but his eyes were full of ridicule. If she was an ordinary lady, under the Lian Xingjie's impudent gaze and Zhang Pei's mocking smile, she would have been so embarrassed that she wished she could find a hole to hide in. However, Qin Yining just stood calmly behind Qin Huayuan, as if he was a legitimate son following his father out to broaden his horizons. Since that's the case, let's talk in the tent. The Dayan Minister of Rites, Cui Wenqing, smiled and said, "I've already ordered people to prepare dishes to go with the wine. Let's talk while we eat. Please. Please." The key members of the peace talks team entered the main tent. Qin Yining naturally followed Qin Huayuan. The tent was a pure white military canopy. A bonfire was burning in the middle of the ground, and an iron pot was boiling water on top of it. The ground was covered with a bright red carpet. Further inside, there were 3 long tables placed on both sides of the tent. Lian Xingjie, a deputy general, and Zhang Pei sat on the left. Qin Huayuan and Cui Wenqing sat on the right. Qin Yining, on the other hand, took a seat behind her father. Lian Xingjie and Qin Huayuan sat facing each other. As soon as he looked up, he could see Qin Yining's beautiful face. His heart was already surging with emotions, and his lust was greatly aroused. Although he was the official in charge of the peace talks, his mind was completely focused on the beautiful woman. He didn't even pay attention to what was discussed. Fortunately, Great Zhou still had Zhang Pei, a steady and sharp man, who was able to engage in a battle of words with Qin Huayuan and Cui Wenqing, openly praising and insinuating, and bargaining with them. That was why they did not fall into a disadvantageous position, and did not let Great Yen gain the upper hand in the battle of words. This negotiation lasted for 8 hours. However, there were many things, such as paying tribute and ceding territory, that didn't reach a consensus. Dezhou's people demanded an exorbitant price. They wanted to maximize their benefits. Qin Huayuan, on the other hand, stubbornly refused to relent and tried his best to minimize the losses. When the lanterns were lit, the soldiers in the tent lit the lanterns. Everyone's mouths were dry from all the talking. Even the wine and dishes were hot and cold. They went back and forth a few times. Lian Xingjie had been looking at the beautiful woman for the entire afternoon. His mind was already churning with countless tricks. When he heard that Qin Huayuan didn't agree to pay 50 million taels of silver as compensation, he frowned and pretended to think, 50 million taels of silver as compensation for the losses of Dezhou's soldiers is really not much. However, it's not like we can't discuss it. When Zhang Pei saw this, he was just about to open his mouth when Lian Xingjie said with a sullen expression, "Mr. Zhang has been busy the entire afternoon. Shouldn't you let this official say a few words?" Zhang Pei was Pang Zhao's aide. In the Tiger Army, he had the title of military advisor. However, he didn't have any actual official rank or military rank. The only reason he was able to sit here today was because of Pang Zhao's promotion. Pang Zhao wasn't in the barracks, so the Tiger Army had to send out a representative. Lian Xingjie didn't dare to do anything to him. However, when Lian Xingjie displayed his authority, there was nothing Jing Pei could do. Seeing that Jing Pei wasn't saying anything, Lian Xingjie stood up and pretended to stretch his arms. He strolled around the tent twice before finally walking over to Qin Huaiyuan's side. He leaned over to look at Qin Yining's fair face. His eyes were full of desire, but his words were directed at Qin Huaiyuan. Of course, peace talk. Peace talk means that we should discuss it together. This official loves to drink wine. I've heard that Grand Preceptor Qin has raised his legitimate daughter as if she were his legitimate son. I'm sure that Miss Gongzi's alcohol tolerance isn't bad. If Miss Gongzi is willing to drink a few cups with this official, then the conditions can still be discussed. It's finally here. Qin Yining closed his eyes. Qin Huaiyuan's hands gradually clenched into fists. Although he was smiling, his heart was struggling between anger and helplessness. Qin Yining didn't want to make things difficult for Qin Huaiyuan, so he stood up and curtsied. Lord Lian is a peerless hero with a forthright personality. This humble girl admires you greatly. Thus, this humble girl will take this opportunity to propose a toast to Lord Lian. As she spoke, she picked up the wine jar and poured a large bowl full of wine for Lian Xingjie. Then, she picked up a small white porcelain wine cup for herself. Lian Xingjie took the white porcelain wine bowl from the beauty. His eyes were filled with her snow-white skin, and his mind was filled with those charming thoughts. How could he possibly react to what he was drinking? His eyes were fixed on Qin Yining as he drank the bowl in one gulp. He felt a burning sensation in his stomach. Only then did he realize that he had been forced to drink a large bowl of Xiaodao. Lian Xingjie was a bit tipsy, but he didn't get angry. Instead, he smiled. A beauty's grace is the hardest to bear. The wine she pours tastes exceptionally good. Is that so? Then Lord Lian should eat another bowl. As the saying goes, 3 bowls won't cross the line. With Lord Lian's bravery, you should eat 3 bowls. As she spoke, she poured another bowl and looked at Lian Xingjie with sparkling eyes. Lian Xingjie was already feeling the effects of the wine. Although he wasn't dizzy and disoriented, the wine had boosted his courage. In his most excited moment, he didn't care if there were others around him. His large hand grabbed Qin Yining's soft and delicate hand and pulled her into his embrace. Beautiful girl, are you trying to get me drunk? Let me tell you, old Lian, am most afraid of a beautiful girl's gentleness. If you're willing to serve me well, then why can't we talk about peace? I'll loosen up a bit here. Your Majesty is far away from my country, so you have to listen to my repayment. Beautiful girl, you're a very perceptive person. I can also see that. If we have a short-lived marriage, then we won't let down this heaven-bestowed fate. Don't you think so? Qin Yining's entire body stiffened and her face turned purple. Her round almond-shaped eyes were filled with humiliation and anger, but more than that, there was nothing she could do. Wasn't this the purpose of her visit today? A short-lived marriage. Shouldn't she be glad that the heavens didn't arrange for this official Lian to take her away? Veins popped out on Qin Huaiyuan's forehead. He couldn't bear it any longer and stood up to block Qin Yining behind him. Official Lian, I only brought my daughter here to see more and gain more knowledge. Let's talk about serious matters first. Qin Yining looked at Qin Huaiyuan's tall back with tears in her eyes. Her father was still protecting her in the end. Although he couldn't disobey the emperor's orders and had no choice but to bring her here, it was still her father who protected her at critical moments. However, could she let her father protect her with a clear conscience? What if the peace talks failed and the emperor blamed her? Lian Xingjie's face immediately darkened. His voice was extremely loud due to the effects of the wine. What? You know that this old Lian is fond of women. Didn't you bring such a great beauty here so that I could enjoy her? Now that I'm giving you face, I'm giving you face. Now that you're regretting it, why didn't you do it earlier? 50 million taels of silver and 15 cities. Not one less. Just now, he only wanted 5 cities, but now he was raising the price on the spot. Qin Yining bit her lip. She didn't want Qin Huaiyuan to spoil the important matter for her. As long as her father protected her in his heart, she was already satisfied. Qin Huaiyuan was also in a dilemma. For a moment, his face turned green and then white. Lian Xingjie smiled proudly and pushed Qin Huaiyuan aside. He grabbed Qin Yining's hand again and was about to lead her out. He was certain that Qin Huaiyuan wouldn't dare to stop him. Who would have thought that at this moment, the curtain of the tent would suddenly be pulled open with a whooshed sound. A tall silhouette carrying a bright and shining broadsword walked in aggressively. This person had broad shoulders, muscular arms, and a thin waist. He was dressed in a black battle robe that made his face look like jade. However, under his slender, sword-like eyebrows, a storm was brewing in his upturned phoenix eyes. Qin Huaiyuan turned his head and was stunned when he saw this person. Qin Yining was even more surprised. Yao Zhishi, she thought quickly and assumed that this person was here to save her. All sorts of feelings welled up in her heart and she almost cried. She frantically tried to persuade him, hurry up and leave. This isn't a place for you. However, Pang Xiao didn't care. He swung his arm and without another word, chopped down with his broadsword. The broadsword went straight for Lian Xingjie's face. If it hit, Lian Xingjie's head would split open. Zheng Pei, who was standing to the side, shouted in fright, "Little Wang Yi, don't." Qin Yining was stunned. Then, he stared at Pang Xiao with wide eyes. Lian Xingjie was so frightened that he sobered up. Oh my God! He took 2 steps back and fell to the ground, narrowly avoiding the broadsword. He was so flustered that he broke out in cold sweat. He pointed a trembling finger at Pang Xiao and shouted, "Pang Zhishi, what are you doing?"